Chapter 42. They had successfully annihilated a barbarian village, but Wu Qi and his men had suffered a great loss. Not to mention the guards who were killed, Lord Flame's arms were severely injured, and he had lost at least 30% of his combat power. Old Devil's spine was shattered, and without the legendary rare medicine to reconnect his bones and meridians, he would be a cripple for the rest of his life. As for Lu Suifeng, he was lying on the ground, his hands grabbing his crotch tightly. His face was pale, and white foam kept bursting out from his mouth. His eyeballs were about to pop out from their sockets, the veins on his neck were popping out, and both of his hands were dyed red with blood. How could this happen? How could this happen? How could this happen? No, I'd rather lose a leg than be crippled like this. Lu Suifeng was in so much pain that his entire body was trembling. His mouth kept repeating, Lord Yen Bugue, save me, save me. Is there any spirit medicine that can regrow a broken limb? Save me. Yen Bugue kept a straight face and didn't say anything. Regrow a broken limb? Maybe there was such a legendary medicine. But even if there was, it was not something that a leader of scouting office like him could get his hands on. Even if he had it, was he going to use it to regrow Lu Suifeng's broken limb? Why didn't it smell right? Wu Qi placed his hands behind his back and walked up to Lu Suifeng with a smile. He craned his neck and looked at Lu Suifeng's wound, then suddenly breathed out a long sigh and said, Sir Yen, after this mission is completed, you have to put in a good word for Marquis Lu. If the great Yen dynasty is short of manpower, why don't you let Marquis Lu in? Yen Bugue's face twisted in a weird way. He clenched his teeth, turned his head and looked at his men who were searching around the village. Lu Suifeng's eyes turned green with anger. He clenched his teeth and stared at Wu Qi, roaring with a hoarse voice, Wu Qi, I swear, I'll kill you, I will. Wu Qi was like a frightened rabbit, he immediately jumped next to Yen Bugue. He bared his teeth, pointed at Lu Suifeng and shouted, Marquis Lu, now we are all following Lord Yen to carry out a military mission, don't you dare mess around. According to the military law of Great Yen Dynasty, what is the crime of assaulting and killing a comrade in the army? Yen Bugue answered coldly, according to the military law of Great Yen Dynasty, those who attack and kill their fellow soldiers will be killed. Lu Suifeng immediately shut his mouth, staring at Wu Qi with a venomous look on his face. Suddenly, he exerted his strength with both hands. As a result, he almost crushed his lower body, causing him to howl in pain again. Coldly looking at Lu Suifeng, Yen Bugue said in a deep voice, Lord Flame, lead the other guards and follow me. He left 2 men to take care of Marquis Lu and Old Devil. If you have the guts, you can stay in this village and wait for us. If you are timid, you can leave the mountain by yourself. Lu Suifeng's body shook, he stared blankly at Yen Bugue. Leaving only 2 guards to take care of him and the Old Devil? Stay in this barbarian village? What if people from other barbarian villages came to visit? What if there were any fierce beasts or poisonous insects? It was a huge risk for them to stay here. But how could they leave the mountain just like that? With just 4 of them, Lu Suifeng didn't have the confidence to leave this place. Yen Bugue couldn't care less about what Lu Suifeng was thinking. He just gave out an order and gathered everyone. From the largest wooden house in the village, his 7 subordinates found a few extremely thin pieces of animal skin, on which were densely covered with unknown drawings. Yen Bugue carefully rolled up the few pieces of animal skin, as if he had found a precious treasure, and sealed them with a copper tube made from the earth-fire trialloy copper. Earth-fire trialloy copper was an alloy made by melting earth-fire magma together with red copper, purple gold, and silver essence. It was light, yet extremely tough, and could withstand high temperatures. This special copper pipe was used by the scouting officers to keep all kinds of important documents. Lu Qingfeng looked at Yen Bugue thoughtfully, as he carefully put the copper pipe into the bag tied around his waist. That inconspicuous black bag, about the size of a fist, was actually a magical storage item. Yen Bugue carefully put away the few beast skins. Obviously, the items on these beast skins were very valuable. After sweeping the entire village, Yenbugue gave out an order and they continued their journey deeper into the forest. A guard was left behind in the ruined village, taking care of Old Devil, whose spine was shattered. Lu Suifeng, whose lower body was severely injured, had his wound bandaged. He asked 2 guards to make a stretcher with a wooden plank and carried him up. Staggering, they caught up with the group. In Lu Suifeng's words, as long as he could still walk, he would follow Yen Bugue and work hard for the great Yen dynasty. Along the way, Wu Qi kept circling around Lu Suifeng. His subtle gaze never left his lower body, which was stained with blood. Lu Suifeng was furious, but as his lower body was severely injured, how could he still have the mood to fight with Wu Qi? Along the way, the group led by Yen Bugue had swept through 13 barbarian villages. These villages did not have a large population, the largest one only had about 600 people. Apart from 4 villages that had powerful beast warriors, the rest of the villages only had ordinary barbarian warriors. Under the violent attacks of Wu Qi and his men, all the villages were wiped out without much effort. There were a few times when the group led by Yen Bugue bumped into the other 2 groups, and they even worked together to wipe out a few barbarian villages, but after that, they would split up in a hurry. Wu Qi did a quick calculation in his mind. The 5 groups basically spread out in a straight line, wiping out all the barbarian villages along the way. After traveling for another 7 days, the group finally arrived at the deepest part of Meng Mountains. The group, who had become like barbarians, came out of the forest while panting. In front of them was a blue lake. The round lake was as flat as a mirror, with a diameter of about 100 miles. There was actually such a huge lake in the deepest part of Meng Mountains. Even Zhang Hu, who had ventured into Meng Mountains countless times to hunt barbarians, could not help but feel amazed. There were dozens of reefs and small islands protruding from the surface of the lake. Large flocks of white water birds were gliding across the surface of the water, reflecting their beautiful bodies in the crystal clear water. Across the lake was a towering green mountain. It was a few thousand meters tall, and many caves were dug out from the mountainside. There were plank paths connecting the caves, and a large number of barbarians could be seen going in and out of the caves. Right in the middle of the mountain was the largest cave, with a diameter of about 1,000 feet. A large amount of smoke kept gushing out from the cave. Be careful when you're here. We'll walk around the lake and meet up with the others at the foot of the mountain. Yen Bugue calculated the time with his fingers, then nodded his head in satisfaction and said, "We're just in time. Tomorrow night, these barbarians will hold a ceremony, a grand ceremony to worship their god. During the ceremony, we'll snatch a few black monoliths." Yen Bugue's gaze was as sharp as a knife. He glared at the men and said, "We have to snatch those monoliths at all costs. We might only have one chance. After the ceremony, these monoliths will be sent to another barbarian tribe in the deepest part of Meng Mountains. It will take at least 60 years for them to return to this tribe. With our current strength, we're not strong enough to go further into Meng Mountains." Zhang Hu opened his mouth and coughed, then he plucked up his courage and asked, "But, my lord, this is the deepest part of Meng Mountains." Yen Bugue gazed at Zhang Hu, sighed deeply and said, "I brought 80 brothers here, and it took us 2 years to find out the general situation of Meng Mountains. The place we're at now can only be considered as the edge of Meng Mountains. The Meng Mountains near Little Meng City is just a branch of the real Meng Mountains. The so-called deep part of Meng Mountains is nothing compared to us." Zhang Hu swallowed his saliva and didn't say anything. Hearing what Yen Bugue said, Wu Qi felt his scalp going numb. The few thousand miles of Meng Mountains near Little Meng City was just a branch of the real Meng Mountains. How big was this Meng Mountains? Yen Bugue didn't pay any attention to them. He led the men and walked along the beach by the lake. When the sky turned dark, they came to a dense forest. The other 4 groups had arrived at this place as well. Wu Qi did a quick calculation. Among all the scouting officers who were dressed like Yen Bugui, there were only 43 of them left. In these 2 years, Yen Bugui and his men had lost 37 men in this forest. He wondered how strong the other scouting officers were. If all of them were beast warriors like Yen Bugui, the loss would be too great. The beast warriors in these barbarian villages could injure embryonic breath cultivators of Xiantian level. This showed how strong they were. Different from Wu Qi's group, the other 4 groups didn't lose too many men. Only Lu Suifeng's personal guards had suffered a great loss. Now, there were still about 800 men left in these 5 groups, and Lu Suifeng's personal guards accounted for half of the men lost. The large group of people hid in the forest. Time passed quickly. At dusk of the next day, a muffled bugle horn and the sound of iron drums suddenly came from the lake a few miles away. Yen Bugui, who was lying under a big tree and pretending to be asleep, suddenly sprung up. He pointed at a few men and signaled them to follow him. Wu Qi and Lu Qingfeng were among them. Carefully, the few men crossed the forest and came to the beach by the lake. They hid behind a small bush. The beach was flat, and there were no obstacles. They could clearly see a large group of barbarians rushing out from a cave at the foot of the mountain with a solemn expression on their faces. Walking at the front of the group were a few old barbarians, who looked like skeletons. Poisonous snakes coiled around their necks, and poisonous bugs dangled from their ears. They were naked, holding bone blades, jade blades, and other sacrificial weapons in their hands. Nearly 10,000 barbarians walked out from the cave. They followed closely behind the few old barbarians and came to the lake. They formed a semicircle on the vast beach, and the few old barbarians stood in the center of the semicircle, facing the lake that was emitting countless silver gleams under the moonlight. Along with the muffled sound of drums, a total of 100 strong and sturdy plate-horn bulls, which were a few times larger than the Spanish bulls Wu Qi had seen before, were led out by a group of barbarians. They lined up in a straight line at the border between the lake and the beach. Following the order given by an old barbarian, the heads of 100 plate-horn bulls were chopped off by the barbarians standing next to them. 100 plate-horn bulls' heads fell into the lake, and a large amount of blood poured into the lake. Soon, a large area of the lake was dyed scarlet. Suddenly, the calm surface of the lake began to stir. Countless silver scales jumped on the surface of the water, and a long dark shadow suddenly emerged from the bottom of the lake. Accompanied by the splashing sound of water, a large, silvery white serpent slowly poked its body out from the lake. It was so beautiful and elegant that it could take one's breath away. The moonlight shone on the serpent's body, and the silvery white scales on its body emitted a mesmerizing glow like a crystal lamp. Chapter 43. It was a giant serpent with a body of over 100 feet long. It looked very similar to the king cobra that Wu Qi was familiar with, but its body was entirely silver white, and its scales were nearly transparent like crystals. It was such a huge serpent, but it did not give people the feeling of fear and unwillingness to approach it. Instead, it was elegant and graceful, and every move it made was filled with an indescribable charm. The huge serpent swam to the side of the lake, quietly lowered its head, and devoured all the wild buffaloes that were killed. After devouring 100 strong buffaloes, the serpent slowly straightened its body, aimed its huge mouth straight at the moon, and breathed out a milky white breath. The breath shot out like a pillar thousands of feet high. At the top of the pillar was a white bead the size of a human head, floating up and down, constantly absorbing the greenish-white moonlight. The greenish-white light that could be seen with naked eyes surged into the white bead wave after wave. From the head of the serpent, circles after circles of mesmerizing light emerged from its body. An enormous aura spread in all directions, and suddenly, a 3-feet-high wave appeared on the surface of the lake. Tens of thousands of barbarians raised their huge weapons and heavy shields at the same time. They lifted their right legs up high, then stomped heavily on the ground, and let out a deep, muffled roar. Ha, ha, ha. The sound of the barbarians' stomping feet and yelling merged into a huge sound wave, shaking the lake water and the surrounding jungle. Countless birds and beasts were scared and ran away in all directions. A few old barbarian leaders raised their jade and bone blades, dancing and singing joyfully. The barbarians cooperated with the dance of their leaders, and the roar became louder and louder. Gradually, these barbarians began to use their innate energy in their roar, making their voices as frightening as thunder. Tens of thousands of thunderous roars mixed together, shaking Wu Qi, who was hiding in the jungle about a mile away, and felt his chest tighten. Set up the formation. Yan Bugui glanced at Lu Qingfeng, and at the same time, handed over 3 fist-sized earth elemental energy stones to Lu Qingfeng. Lu Qingfeng's eyes lit up. He grabbed the spirit stones that Yan Bugui handed over and hurriedly took out 3 array pillars, embedding the 3 spirit stones into the array pillars. In the past, the earth attribute spirit stones he had used to activate the grand white gold dagger array were only the size of a thumb. These 3 fist-sized spirit stones contained at least 10 times more energy than the ones he had used before. The power of the array would definitely increase by a large margin. Crawling on the ground, Lu Qingfeng slid forward along the beach for a while. Then, he set up a large formation on the beach beside the lake. In order to increase the power of the formation, Lu Qingfeng clenched his teeth and made up his mind. He took out some of the silver essence and gold essence he had extracted in Little Meng City and placed them beside the pillars of the formation. With the assistance of these metal essences, the array pillars could absorb the grand white gold essence qi, and the power of the array would definitely rise to another level. Yan Bugui took out a thick stack of red talismans from his bag and handed it over to one of his subordinates. Tell the men in the wood to be ready. Everyone's crossbow bolts were wrapped in explosive talismans. Give them a powerful one. When Yan Bugui took out the stack of talismans, a painful expression could be seen on his face. His eyelids were twitching. His subordinate swallowed a mouthful of saliva, took over the stack of talismans, turned around, and slipped back into the woods where the men were hiding. The dancing of the barbarians was getting wilder and wilder, and their roars were getting louder and louder. Suddenly, the melodious and clear singing of barbarian girls was heard. Over 1,000 barbarian girls walked out while singing and dancing. They jumped into the lake and danced crazily around the body of the giant serpent. Their melodious singing combined with the rough roars of those barbarian men gave them a strange charm. These barbarian girls had their long hair hanging loosely over their shoulders, revealing most of their fair bodies. They were dancing crazily around the giant serpent. Their bodies were twisting and turning like a snake. The giant serpent seemed to be influenced by these girls, as its body began to sway gently from side to side. Ha! Does anyone know this giant serpent? Yan Bugui took out a bronze crossbow that was only the size of 2 palms from his bag. He clenched his teeth and used all his strength to pull the string of the crossbow. Then, he carefully placed a crimson crossbow bolt that looked like it was made of red crystal onto the string. Lu Qingfeng and the others looked at each other and shook their heads at the same time. They did not know the origin of this giant serpent. Meanwhile, Wu Qi was staring at the giant serpent, his saliva almost dripping down from his mouth. He murmured to himself, the innate water serpent. It will turn black in 100 years, green in 1,000 years, and only after 3,000 years can it become as white as this. This is an innate water serpent that has been raised for at least 3,000 years. Among all the water elemental beasts in the world, it is ranked 37th among the lower-tier spirit beasts. Yan Bugui bared his teeth and said, a 3,000-years-old monster. TSK, I wonder if the fiery demon-slaying crossbow given to us by Si Li can hurt it. Looking at Wu Qi in surprise, Yan Bugui gave him a thumbs up and praised, Brother Wu Qi, you are quite knowledgeable. Lu Qingfeng immediately chimed in, Master Yan, Wu Qi is Qingfeng's chief right-hand man. Qingfeng only has a few capable people by his side. You must not try to poach people from me. Yan Bugui glared at Lu Qingfeng and grinned. Then, he carefully aimed the crossbow at the giant serpent. The moon had already reached the middle of the sky. The dancing and singing barbarians suddenly quietened down. A soft and gentle voice rang out, "O guardian spirit of my tribe, now is the time for you to fulfill the promise you made with our ancestors." The barbarians parted to the left and right, and a naked barbarian girl slowly walked out from the crowd. Wu Qi and the others were stunned. This barbarian girl was really too beautiful. Especially Zhang Hu, saliva was dripping down from the corner of his mouth. This girl was a head taller than Wu Qi. She had a slim and healthy body. She looked like a plump person with a little bit more weight, and a little bit less weight. There was not a single blemish on her body. She had a beautiful face, the most perfect face that Wu Qi had ever seen. It was as if all the spiritual energy in this forest had gathered on her body, giving birth to such a beautiful girl. The girl swayed her slender waist and slowly walked in front of the giant serpent. She raised her head and looked at the giant serpent. The giant serpent, which was swallowing the essence of the moon, slowly lowered its head. Suddenly, a vague voice came out from its mouth, "Descendant of Shirja, do you have the qualification to accept my soul?" The girl giggled. Suddenly, her body flashed and she appeared on the beach 1,000 feet away. There was a crouching bull rock that was about the size of 3 to 5 grown men. The young girl slapped the boulder lightly with her hand, and the huge boulder immediately exploded into countless fragments that splattered in all directions. The strength of the girl's palm was too shocking. Some of the pieces even flew to the side of Wu Qi and the others. Wu Qi grabbed a piece of rock and squeezed it with his fingers. The rock cracked, but even though Wu Qi had reached the level of respiration, he still felt a sharp pain in his fingers. The bones of his fingers were almost broken by the recoil of the rock. This girl is at least at the level of spirit focus. Wu Qi shook his head, he stared at the girl and said in a low voice, "She is different from Old Devil and Lord Flame, who practice evil skills and use external forces to increase their level. This girl's cultivation is real, not fake at all." Yen Bugue grabbed a few pieces of rock that fell beside him. The surface of the rock was as smooth as a mirror. It could be seen that the girl's strength was very uniform. She had crushed the rock in an instant. He also squeezed the rock hard, and the rock was crushed into powder. Yen Bugue's fingers were also red. What a monster! She doesn't look that old, how could she have such a terrifying cultivation? Lu Qingfeng stared at the girl's voluptuous breasts and buttocks, and subconsciously smacked his lips. Yen Bugue had a strange expression on his face. He said in a low voice, "She is about to merge with the soul of this innate water serpent, and turn it into her own natal beast soul. How could a person who has become a beast warrior be weak?" Yen Bugue pointed at his nose with his thumb, sneered, and said, "The wind-breaking wolf I merged with is only ranked 197th among the lower tier wood elemental demon beasts. The requirement to merge with it is to have a cultivation of the peak of the Hotian realm, let alone a spirit beast like this." Beside the lake, the innate water serpent didn't seem satisfied with the girl's strength. It snorted coldly, glanced at the girl from head to toe, and finally nodded its head reluctantly, "I will fulfill the promise I made with your ancestors. My soul will protect the Shirja clan until the end of my life and yours. As for my body, you have to take good care of it, and don't let anyone blaspheme it." Except for the girl, all the barbarians knelt down on the ground and answered with respect. The gigantic serpent took a deep breath, turned its head around and looked at the beautiful scenery of the lake and mountains. It breathed out a long sigh and said, "It's been 3,800 years. I've been living here for a long time. Woman, when my soul resides in your soul, I will sleep forever, until the end of my life and yours. Use my power in the right way, protect your clan, and strengthen my soul." The gigantic serpent opened its mouth and swallowed the white airflow and the white pearl back into its body, then said with an indifferent voice, "Get ready, accept my power and my soul." All the barbarians rose to their feet, once again waving their weapons and shields, stamping their feet and roaring. The barbarian girl slowly walked in front of the gigantic serpent and sat down with her legs crossed in the lake. Deep chanting came out from the mouths of the few barbarian leaders. They waved their jade and bone blades, circling around the girl and the gigantic serpent, and started dancing crazily. As they danced, a chilly wind suddenly swept across the woods. The bone-piercing cold wind whistled across the sky, spinning rapidly around them. The scouting officers brought all the men in the woods and sneaked into the woods, carefully lining up into a charging formation. The barbarians had fallen into a crazy religious atmosphere. They could never imagine that deep in the mountains, in the core area where they had lived for generations, there would be a group of outsiders sneaking into the woods. Under Yen Bugue's order, over 800 triple and 9-bolt crossbows were slowly raised up, aiming at the barbarians on the beach. Suddenly, the gigantic serpent let out a sharp hiss, as a large amount of snow-white blood dripped down from its mouth. It struggled and twisted its body in pain, then a white shadow, which looked exactly the same as its body, slowly slithered out from its mouth and hovered above the girl's head. One of the barbarian leaders leapt over and used a bone blade to cut a bloody mark between the girl's eyebrows. Blood dripped down, and a shadow that looked exactly the same as the girl slowly floated out from between the girl's eyebrows. It was the girl's soul. The surrounding barbarians started singing an ancient and distant song at the same time. They knelt down on the ground devoutly, worshipping the gigantic serpent that had lost all signs of life. The gigantic serpent's body fell heavily into the lake, splashing up a huge wave. The girl's soul waved her hands, chanting a mysterious spell and forming a strange hand seal. Streams of green light were emitted from her hands, connecting with the gigantic serpent's soul. The gigantic serpent's soul slowly flew closer to the girl's soul, and the white pearl the size of a human head followed suit. After merging with me, absorb all the energy in this pearl. It will increase your strength rapidly. The light in the eyes of the gigantic serpent's soul gradually dimmed, and its voice became muffled. Yen Bugue suddenly leapt into the air. A loud bang was heard from the crossbow, and the red arrow was shot towards the girl's body. Everyone, attack! More than 3,000 barbarians were killed by the explosive talismans, and another 3,000 were wounded. More than half of the remaining 4,000 barbarians were wounded by the crossbow bolts. All the arrows were dipped in poison. As long as the barbarians were injured, their bodies would turn black and they would die on the spot. Kill! Yen Bugue let out a long roar, and a ball of green light gushed out from his back. The shadow of the wind-breaking green wolf emerged, and his strength and speed increased by a few times. He turned into a green shadow, and dashed towards the barbarian with a sword light. As soon as Chi-Chi let out a roar, a green light burst out from the backs of the several dozen strong men from scouting office, and within the green light, all of them were shadows of green wind-breaking wolves. They followed closely behind Yen Bugue and dashed towards the barbarians. The green light flickered, and the howls of the wolves soared into the sky. It really sounded like a pack of hungry wolves that had gone mad and were hunting for their prey. Lu Qingfeng trembled when he saw this. He looked up into the sky and let out a long sigh with envy and jealousy. Oh my heavens, all the subordinates of scouting office are beast warriors. I can't believe the legend is true. How much wealth does it take to raise so many demon beasts? Following closely behind Yen Bugue and his men, Wu Qi let out a loud laugh and said, "How much wealth does it take? Young master, you don't have that much money right now." Amidst the strange laughter, Wu Qi pulled out his sword, and with a bright gleam in his eyes, he dashed towards the white pearl that was slowly falling down from the sky. He had his eyes on this treasure since a long time ago. This pearl was the combination of the natural essence and water elemental energy that the innate water serpent had absorbed in her 3,800 years of life. Don't anyone try to snatch it from me, or else, I'll kill you all. Wu Qi's eyes turned green, and a murderous aura that could be seen with naked eyes burst out from his body. Clang! Lu Qingfeng pulled out his long, flexible sword, and dashed out with a loud laugh. He could tell what Wu Qi's target was. Without hesitation, he pulled out his sword and stood behind Wu Qi. Zhang Hu and Hu Wei, on the other hand, were holding their crossbows tightly, standing guard behind Lu Qingfeng. Their eyes were vigilantly looking at the warriors who came with them. Wild beastly roars came from the midst of the barbarians who had suffered heavy casualties. Different colored lights flashed, as over 30 barbarian warriors, who also had the shadows of wild beasts flashing behind their backs, dashed out while cursing loudly, engaging in a fierce battle with Yen Bugui and his men of scouting office. The sound of weapons clashing against each other was so loud that it hurt everyone's eardrums. Both sides had used all their strength and used their strongest attacks. With just a single collision, 15 barbarians and 9 scouting officers were sent flying away by their enemies, with blood spurting out from their bodies. Yen Bugui roared out crazily, "All of you, follow me and charge. Those who make contributions will be rewarded handsomely, and those who hesitate will have their entire families executed." Lu Suifeng and Lu Ziyuan also screamed out, "Charge, charge, charge. Charge." The situation had gone crazy for a moment. When they heard Yen Bugui mentioning the reward, all the warriors used all their strength and charged forward together with the men of scouting office. While running, these warriors quickly loaded their crossbows. When they reached the front of the barbarians, they even shot out 2 waves of arrows, killing another few hundred barbarian warriors. Among them, there were even 7 barbarian beast warriors. When these barbarians were carrying out the sacrificial ceremony, their formation was too tight. Therefore, when they were hit by the arrows, they were immediately killed. However, there were still about 2,000 to 3,000 barbarians who could still fight. Although all of them were slightly wounded, they had slowly regrouped and formed a line of defense on the path leading to the cliff. When these barbarian warriors had gathered together and formed a line of defense, Yen Bugui suddenly stopped. He quickly took out the demon-slaying crossbow and loaded another arrow onto the string. Then, he shouted out, "This is the last explosive arrow. Brothers, charge!" Bang! A stream of red light darted out, and swallowed up all the barbarian warriors who were guarding in front of the cliff once again. Nearly 60% of the barbarian warriors were turned into ashes by the explosion of the red flame arrow. Yen Bugui put the crossbow back into the storage bag, then held up his sword and charged straight toward the hole at the bottom of the cliff. Suddenly, an ear-piercing whistling sound came from the sky. On the cliff that was 20 to 30 feet above the ground, a few hundred young barbarians poked their heads out from a hole that was dug out. These young barbarians were still underage, but they already had enough strength to pull open a strong bough made from tree vines and shoot out the poisonous prickles that Wu Qi had used before. Yen Bugui and the other scouting officers were surrounded by a green light. Suddenly, a strong gust of wind burst out from under their feet, and with an incredible speed, they dashed into the hole at the bottom of the cliff. The dozens of warriors who were madly rushing from behind were caught off guard, and were hit by the prickles shot out by the barbarian youths. In just a few seconds, they had turned into a pile of black flesh and blood, and were twitching in pain. However, these warriors were also charging at an incredible speed. With just a few leaps, they had already engaged in a fierce battle with those barbarian warriors who were lucky enough to survive. When the young barbarians on the cliff saw this, none of them dared to release any more arrows. They could only stare blankly at the battle below. During this brief moment of hesitation, Yen Bugui and his men, who were as fierce as wolves and tigers, had already reached the top of the cliff. Amidst the flashing of a green shadow, Yen Bugui dashed into the midst of these young barbarians like a beam of sword light and began a massacre. Every time he swung his sword, a few feet-long beam of sword energy would burst out from the tip of his sword. How could these young barbarians who had yet to reach adulthood withstand the massacre of the elite scouting officers? In just a few breaths of time, hundreds of young barbarians were killed. Wu Qi leaped into the air and dashed towards the corpse of the gigantic serpent, which had been blown into pieces by the explosion, leaving only half of its bones behind. Casually, he reached his hand into the air and activated the hand of web. An invisible whirlpool of air sucked the serpent pearl into Wu Qi's palm. Wu Qi pinched the serpent pearl, which was the size of a human head with his innate energy constantly flowing into it. As soon as the serpent pearl absorbed the human energy, it immediately shrunk to a size that could fit Wu Qi's palm. At this moment, the white serpent pearl had already shrunk into the shape of a sapphire, a strange crystal that emitted a mesmerizing ripple of water. Wu Qi could feel the surging water elemental energy within the serpent pearl, and could not help but let out a loud laugh. After that, he immediately stuffed the serpent pearl into a secret pocket in front of his chest. A wave of heat came from behind. Lord Flame waved his blood-stained palms and slapped towards Wu Qi's back. "Little bastard, do you think a kid like you is worthy of such a treasure? Give it to your ancestor." Lord Flame's eyes were shining. The serpent pearl of the innate water serpent was not something that Lord Flame, who practiced a fire elemental skill, could use. However, he could use it to exchange for other treasures that he could use. According to Lord Flame's estimation, this innate water serpent pearl was worth at least 100 of his stolen silk bags. With a swish, Lu Qingfeng's flexible sword brought up a green light and pierced towards Lord Flame's back. Lord Flame waved his palm, and a threatening flame soared into the sky. Lu Qingfeng's flexible sword was burned red, and drooped down like a soft-skinned snake. A well-tempered sharp weapon was instantly melted into a piece of trash. The clothes in front of Lu Qingfeng's chest suddenly caught on fire. He hurriedly retreated, and at the same time, he did not forget to take out 3 slender silver needles, and shot them towards Lord Flame's back, lumbar spine, and tailbone. Zhang Hu and Hu Wei had been following closely behind Lu Qingfeng, in order to help Wu Qi get the serpent pearl. Lord Flame suddenly launched an attack, and the two reacted quickly. They immediately raised their 9-bolt crossbows and shot 18 arrows at Lord Flame. Lord Flame was extremely angry, and he shouted, "Good, good, I'll kill all of you." He grabbed the serpent pearl in Wu Qi's hand, and waved his left sleeve. 2 10-feet-long fire snakes flew out and shot towards Zhang Hu and Hu Wei. With a sizzling sound, the 18 bolts made of pure steel were melted by the fire snakes, and fell to the ground. The fire snakes danced wildly, and Zhang Hu and Hu Wei hurriedly retreated. They rolled dozens of times on the ground, and finally managed to avoid the fire snakes. The 2 arm-thick fire snakes fell to the ground, and the sand within a radius of a few feet was melted into glass. Lord Flame laughed proudly, and his fingertips were about to touch the serpent pearl in Wu Qi's palm. Wu Qi suddenly smiled strangely, and a blue light flashed in his palm. He took the initiative to put the serpent pearl into Lord Flame's palm. Chapter 45. While laughing wildly, Lord Flame grabbed the serpent pearl in his palm. Then, his face turned pale and his body suddenly stiffened. In the scroll of stealing, there were all kinds of strange and even unorthodox spells. Among them, there was a spell that used internal energy to stimulate the inner pearl of spirit beasts and unleash the power within it. The originally stable serpent pearl was injected by Wu Qi with a thread of innate water energy. Immediately, like a spark falling into a barrel of gunpowder, the huge amount of energy in the serpent pearl began to surge violently. The huge amount of water elemental energy brought with it a bone-piercing cold air, like the water of the Yellow River bursting through a broken dam, rushing into Lord Flame's body with a vague sound of waves. Suddenly, Lord Flame's palm became snow-white. Small pieces of ice crystals began to spread from his palm to his body. In just a breath's time, the terrible cold air had frozen Lord Flame's body, turning him into an ice man. The 5 elements created and restrained water and fire. The innate water serpent, who had lived in this lake for 3,800 years, had the same cultivation level as Lord Flame, which was only at the embryonic breath tier of Xiantian level. But the body of the innate water serpent was too huge. The water elemental energy in its body was at least 1,000 times more than the innate energy in Lord Flame's body. It was like using a bucket of water to extinguish the flame of a match. The fire elemental energy in Lord Flame's body was instantly extinguished. His body could not withstand the huge amount of energy in the serpent pearl, and his life force was instantly frozen. Wu Qi sneered and grabbed the serpent core with one hand. Activating the hand of web, the water elemental energy that rushed into Lord Flame's body quickly flowed back into the serpent pearl. Although there were some losses when Lord Flame was frozen to death, the loss was almost negligible. Then, he slapped his palm onto Lord Flame's chest, shattering his frozen heart into pieces. Then, Wu Qi exerted a suction force from his palm, causing all the blood and qi essence in Lord Flame's body that had yet to dissipate to rush out, transforming into a bright thread of blood and shooting into Wu Qi's palm. After breaking through to the respiration tier of Xiantian level, the amount of blood and qi essence that Wu Qi could obtain had increased from 1,000th to 100th. Although Lord Flame was practicing an evil cultivation technique, his qi and blood were strong and vigorous. He was more than 100 times stronger than Wu Qi, who was at the respiration stage of the Xiantian level. The 1% of blood qi essence that Wu Qi had stolen was almost equal to the total amount of essence qi in his body. An explosive power was surging within his body. Wu Qi put the serpent pearl into a secret pocket on his chest and carefully hid it. Then, he kicked the dead Lord Flame and sent him flying hundreds of feet away. He quickly glanced at the dumbfounded Lu Qingfeng and the others and hurriedly gestured for them to leave. A few warriors, who were also coveting the serpent pearl, had just rushed in front of Wu Qi when they saw Lord Flame, who was at the embryonic breath stage of the Xiantian realm, being killed by Wu Qi with some unknown method. They were so scared that they turned around and ran away. Only a Xiantian master could kill a Xiantian master. How could these warriors who hadn't even reached the peak of the Hotian realm dare to fight with Wu Qi? Kill them. Silence them. Wu Qi grabbed a heavy sword that was used by barbarians from the ground and swung it out. A sword beam shot out and cut 3 of the barbarians into 6 pieces. Lu Qingfeng, Zhang Hu, and Hu Wei dashed forward at the same time and killed the other 2 warriors who were trying to escape from the back. The scene was a complete mess. The warriors brought by Yan Bugui and the others were fighting with the barbarians. Although the battle between Wu Qi and the others seemed to last a long time, in fact, it only lasted for 3 seconds. Wu Qi and the others had blended into the crowd and pretended to fight with the barbarians. Surprisingly, no one had noticed that they had killed Lord Flame. Lu Suifeng and Lu Ziyuan were not far away from them, commanding dozens of guards to fight with the barbarians. They were risking their lives and rushing towards the cave entrance at the foot of the mountain. The generous reward promised by Yan Bugui had almost driven them crazy. Only they knew what the so-called generous reward of the scouting office really meant. He threw away the heavy barbarian sword that was still a little heavy for him, and grabbed a light single-edged sword from a dead warrior on the ground. He swung the sword 3 times in a row and killed 12 barbarian warriors in front of him. He was now a respiration-level warrior of the Xiantian realm. As for the Hotian realm warriors, unless they were surrounded by hundreds of peak Hotian warriors, there was no way they could defeat him. After a round of slaughter, over 100 barbarian warriors were killed by Wu Qi like chickens and dogs. He brought Lu Qingfeng, Zhang Hu, and his personal guards and arrived at the entrance of the cave located at the foot of the mountain. Wu Qi shouted, "Master Yan, our young master has brought us here to support you." From the cave above, Yan Bugui's voice came from afar, "Good. Hurry up and kill them. I'll give you the credit. Damn barbarians." Boom! A loud explosion was heard, and a ball of flame burst out from the cave entrance that was nearly 1,000 feet above the ground. It seemed like Yan Bugui had used the explosive talisman. Dozens of young barbarians, who hadn't fully grown yet, were pushed out of the cave entrance by the flame, howling in pain as they fell from the sky. Wu Qi let out a long laugh, swung his sword and killed dozens of barbarian warriors who were rushing towards him. He pressed his left palm on their bodies and extracted a huge amount of their blood and qi essence. The blood and qi essence extracted from Lord Flame's body had not been digested yet. Wu Qi gathered all the blood and qi essence in his left palm. His left palm had expanded to the size of a small millstone, and the skin of his palm was as red as blood, emitting a faint blood-red glow. A shrill ape cry was heard. A barbarian beast warrior, whose back was shimmering with a faint black gleam, and amidst the black gleam was the shadow of a 10 feet tall black ape. With a long stick in his hand, he swung it towards Wu Qi's head. The long stick was made from some unknown black metal. It was heavy and brought up a strong gust of wind. When the long stick was still a few feet away from Wu Qi, the strong gust of wind had already forced Lu Qingfeng and the other two to suffocate. Wu Qi gazed at the barbarian beast warrior coldly. The blood and qi in his left palm started to boil. He had gathered half of the blood and qi he had absorbed just now into his palm, then he fiercely thrust his palm forward. A huge bloody palm print, about 2 feet in circumference, was thrust out from his palm, colliding with the long stick while emitting a threatening cold air. The long stick was broken by the strange howl of the palm print. The huge bloody palm print of Wu Qi hit the chest of the barbarian beast warrior, shattering his entire chest into pieces. A sharp howl of an ape was heard, and the black ape behind the barbarian beast warrior suddenly leaped up into the sky. Wu Qi injected his innate water energy into the long sword. The misty white sword beam shot out to a distance of over 10 feet, piercing through the heart of the black ape. The black ape's soul exploded into pieces, and countless soul fragments sprayed out in all directions. Wu Qi activated the secret technique from Scroll of Stealing, absorbing all the soul fragments into his body. After being purified by the innate water energy, they merged with Wu Qi's soul. Wu Qi felt his spirit was refreshed, and his 5 senses and divine sense had once again improved by 1 level. He let out a loud and joyful laugh, then with his left hand, he killed 18 barbarian warriors in a row, extracting their blood and qi essence and gathering them in his left palm. After that, he brought Lu Qingfeng and the others and quickly rushed into the cave. Lu Suifeng and Lu Ziyuan also brought a group of elite guards and rushed into the cave, following closely behind Wu Qi and the others. Lu Ziyuan stared at Lu Qingfeng's back and cursed in a low voice, "You want to be the chief contributor? You damn bastard, what makes you think you can get the chief contributor? The chief contributor belongs to us." Under the lead of Wu Qi, the group of men rushed into the cave like a hot knife cutting through butter, and quickly met up with Yan Bugui and the others. At this point of time, there were only about 20 scouting officers left with Yan Bugui. In front of them was a huge cave, and it was filled with over 200 barbarian warriors, each wearing fine armors. Among them, there were even dozens of beast warriors. Behind these warriors, on top of an altar made of pure gold, 3 black stone tablets, each about half the height of a human, were placed neatly on top of it. Get those 3 stone tablets, you will be rewarded with a great merit. Yan Bugui's body was covered in blood, and his eyes had turned red because of the crazy massacre. The great general has offered a reward for the things on these stone tablets for over 100 years. Whoever gets the stone tablets will be rewarded with at least a county's land. A county's land. Lu Qingfeng, Lu Suifeng, and Lu Ziyuan started panting violently at the same time. Being rewarded with a county's land meant that from now on, that county's land would be the family's hereditary fief. It was a completely different concept from those prefectural governors. Furthermore, a county's land in the Great Yan dynasty was very different from a county in a vassal kingdom. Generally speaking, the land area of a county in the Great Yan dynasty was a few times larger than a county in a vassal kingdom. No matter it was the population or the tax revenue, it was much stronger than a vassal kingdom. Wu Qi! Lu Qingfeng shouted out loudly. Wu Qi let out a long and loud cry. All the energy in his body and all the blood essence he had absorbed just now merged into his left palm, turning into an explosive and frightening force. The force was so powerful that even Wu Qi's meridians, which had been strengthened 9 times, couldn't withstand it. A few meridians and acupoints on his palm began to crack, and the severe pain made the corners of Wu Qi's eyes burst open and blood dripped down. Go! Wu Qi let out a loud cry, and a blood beam shot out from his left palm. The blood beam was as thick as a millstone, and it was hundreds of feet long. The pungent smell of blood assaulted everyone's nostrils, and the bone-piercing cold air contained within it lowered the temperature of the cave by dozens of degrees. Those who didn't have a strong enough cultivation were shivering from the cold. The blood beam rushed into the dense formation of barbarian warriors, and exploded with a loud bang. Countless finger-sized blood beams shot in all directions, and at least 100 barbarian warriors were torn into pieces by the explosion. The rest of the barbarians were wounded as well, and their bodies were riddled with many holes of different sizes. With the palm strike, the innate water energy in Wu Qi's body was completely depleted. His body went limp, and he nearly fell to the ground. He took a deep breath, and the serpent pearl in the secret pocket on his chest released a rolling cold current that flowed all over his body. His real water gang, which had just been exhausted, instantly calmed down, and it was 30% purer and 30% stronger than before. Lu Suifeng shouted out loud as well, "Lord Flame, Lord Flame." No one responded. Lord Flame was already dead, so how could he respond to Lu Suifeng's call? Yen Bugui let out a long laugh, and together with his subordinates who were covered in wounds, they leaped forward and started a fierce fight with those barbarian beast warriors. Lu Suifeng and Lu Ziyuan hurriedly ordered their guards to shoot the arrows. Together with Yen Bugui and his men, the arrows flew out and killed all the barbarians. Wu Qi dashed out like a gust of wind, grabbed 3 stone tablets that were half a man tall, 2 inches thick, and 1 foot wide, and carried them on his shoulder. He had no idea what material these 3 stone tablets were made from. They were hard, flexible, and very light. The total weight of these 3 stone tablets was only about 30 kilograms. With a kick, he kicked away 2 of Lu Suifeng's guards who were trying to snatch the stone tablets. After that, Wu Qi shouted out, "Master Yen, let's retreat." Yen Bugui let out a long laugh, and then he shouted back, "We've got it. Bring those brothers who died in the battle and retreat." The men of scouting office surrounded Wu Qi, picking up the dead bodies of their comrades, and quickly retreated from the cave. In the forest far away, they could vaguely hear the sound of drums and horns. Chapter 46. Run! Rushing out from the cave, Yen Bugui immediately let out a loud shout. All the warriors who were fighting with those crazy barbarians outside the cliff started to gather together. Following closely behind them were Yen Bugui and the others, who had surrounded Wu Qi, as they ran back the way they came from. After the explosive talisman, the explosive arrows, and more than 10 volleys of arrows, there were less than 800 barbarian warriors who could still stand up. And the number of warriors who could retreat in one piece was only about 300. Although the barbarians had suffered a great number of casualties, the warriors who went deep into the forest to assist the scouting office in carrying out the military mission were also almost all dead. With the help of a few guards, Lu Suifeng staggered and ran forward. While running, he kept staring at the 3 black stone tablets on Wu Qi's shoulder. His eyes were about to burst into flames. Lu Ziyuan was holding a short dagger in his palm. There were a few times when he couldn't control himself and wanted to throw the dagger at Wu Qi's back. But when he looked at Yen Bugui and the others, and then looked at Lu Qingfeng who was always guarding beside Wu Qi, he suddenly lost the courage to do it. "Damn it, he has taken all the credit." Lu Ziyuan complained to Lu Suifeng in a low voice. Lu Suifeng's face darkened. He clenched his fists tightly, wishing that a bolt of lightning would come down from the sky and strike Wu Qi to death. He turned around angrily, but to his horror, he found the dead body of Lord Flame lying on the ground not far from him. His body was covered with a thin layer of ice, and he died in a miserable way. Lu Suifeng's body suddenly trembled, and he almost fell to the ground. Old Devil was severely injured, and his spine was broken. Without any miracle, he would be a cripple for the rest of his life. Lord Flame had died here for no reason. How was he going to explain this to his father, Lord Puyang, when he returned? With his father's status and power, there were only 3 or 4 Xiantian-level cultivators in his family. It took him a lot of effort to invite 2 embryonic breath-level Xiantian cultivators to help him. "It's over." Lu Suifeng's face was pale, and he had no strength left in his body. He had to rely on a few guards to drag him away. Wu Qi could sense the evil intentions from Lu Suifeng and Lu Ziyuan. While carrying the 3 black stone tablets and running forward, he turned his head around and grinned at them. Lu Suifeng stared blankly at the dead body of Lord Flame. He didn't respond to Wu Qi's smile. As for Lu Ziyuan, he was panicking and hid the dagger in his right hand behind his back. Wu Qi's eyes turned cold. He pursed his lips, and the lines of his lips turned into the shape of a dangerous blade. A group of people ran wildly in front, while hundreds of barbarian warriors roared and charged towards them from behind. A few severely wounded barbarian beast warriors crawled up from the pile of corpses. Their bodies were burning with a strange fire-like aura, urging the last bit of their energy to chase after Wu Qi. The drumming in the distant mountain forest was getting closer and closer, and they could vaguely hear the sounds of birds and beasts running in the distance. Run, run! Wu Qi and the group quickly ran past the beach where Lu Qingfeng had deployed the grand white gold dagger formation. Hundreds of barbarian warriors had already caught up with them. Suddenly, the sky above them turned dark. A large group of giant vultures with blood-red feathers let out sharp screeches as they flew from the distant mountain forest and arrived above their heads. Each of these vultures had a wingspan of about 70 to 80 feet. On the backs of these vultures, there were 3 to 5 short bird barbarians, all of them pulling their bows and preparing to launch an attack. Activate the formation. Yen Bugue roared out, if we can escape from this wave of bird barbarians, we will have a 60% chance of getting out of here alive. Lu Qingfeng let out a long cry. He bit the tip of his tongue and spat out a mouthful of blood. The blood accurately hit one of the pillars buried in the beach. Activating the formation with his own blood essence, the 3 pillars immediately shone with a blinding white light, and a thick mist of grand white gold essence energy sprayed out from the ground. This time, the grand white gold essence energy gathered by the formation was extremely dense. It was at least 100 times denser than the one he had deployed in the general's office. Using both of his hands, Lu Qingfeng quickly activated the formation with all his strength. Furthermore, he had used the most powerful method, which was to destroy the base of the formation, to activate all the energy in the 3 pillars in an instant. A blinding light burst out from the 3 pillars, and suddenly, they exploded. The 3-foot-thick grand white gold essence energy on the ground let out a loud and ear-piercing sound of metal clashing. Then, thousands of palm-sized crescent-shaped machetes appeared out of thin air. Lu Qingfeng spat out another mouthful of blood essence, then waved both of his hands in the air. Thousands of machetes let out a sharp screeching sound at the same time, tearing the air apart and shooting towards the sky like a meteor shower. The sound of flesh breaking could be heard constantly. More than 500 giant vultures had just arrived above their heads when they were hit by the grand white gold daggers. The grand white gold essence energy was the most ferocious energy in the world. It was extremely sharp and unstoppable. About 300 vultures had their bodies penetrated by the machetes. The machetes tore the vultures' huge bodies into pieces, and pierced through the bodies of the bird barbarians behind them. Bird cries and human howls filled the air. Blood rained down from the sky. With a pair of bloodshot eyes, Lu Qingfeng pointed his finger at the countless crescent-shaped machetes in the air and shouted, "Break!" A loud metallic screech resounded through the air. Thousands of machetes exploded at the same time, turning into hundreds of thousands of bean-sized, cold light beams, shooting all over the sky. The rest of the vultures and bird barbarians were riddled with holes by the cold light beams. They screeched and fell down from the sky. Obviously, all the vultures and bird barbarians had lost their lives. Countless cold beams shot down from the sky like a sudden hailstorm, along with a sharp whistling sound, covering the few barbarian beast warriors and about 800 barbarians who were chasing after them. The entire beach was covered by the cold light beams. Those barbarians had no place to hide, and neither did Lu Qingfeng and the others. Their crude leather and iron armors could not withstand the attack of the cold light beams. In just a blink of an eye, these barbarians were smashed into meat paste. Shrill cries came from the cliff behind them. Not long after that, from the cave that Wu Qi and the others came out from, countless barbarians, old, weak, women, and children, carrying all kinds of crude weapons, rushed out from the cave and chased after Wu Qi and the others. Those barbarian children, who had just learned how to run, and those old barbarians who could no longer move, clenched their teeth tightly and rushed out from the cave, chasing after Wu Qi and the others. However, they could only pretend to be chasing after them. Wu Qi and the others were running away at an incredible speed. How could these old and weak barbarians catch up with them? However, those old and weak barbarians with bloodshot eyes were emanating a vicious aura, which made Wu Qi and the others, who were standing a few miles away, feel as if there were needles poking into their backs, making them feel extremely uncomfortable. Lu Qingfeng let out a loud laugh and was about to continue his escape when both of his legs went soft and he almost fell to the ground. Suddenly, his legs went soft and he almost fell to the ground. After spitting out a few mouthfuls of blood essence, and using all his strength to drive the grand white gold dagger formation to self-destruct, unleashing the power of the formation that could last for a few months, Lu Qingfeng had long exhausted all of his internal energy, and the loss of his blood essence was even worse. Right now, his vision was blurred, and there was not a single trace of internal energy left in his body. How could he still have the strength to run? Wu Qi grabbed Lu Qingfeng and placed him on his shoulder, then pressed his left hand on Lu Qingfeng's back, slowly injecting the blood and qi essence that he had absorbed just now into Lu Qingfeng's body, but never had the chance and time to absorb. Lu Qingfeng felt that his body was boiling hot, as a huge amount of blood essence was constantly being injected into his body. His eyes suddenly became as bright as stars, and his body was filled with an endless power. Wonderful! Lu Qingfeng couldn't stop praising, Wu Qi, what kind of technique is this? It's really wonderful. Wu Qi twisted his lips and shouted with a low voice, shut up. I'm using my own energy essence to replenish your energy, of course it's wonderful. Immediately, Lu Qingfeng shut his mouth. Cooperating with the blood essence that Wu Qi had injected into his body, he slowly adjusted his breathing and circulated his energy, quickly replenishing his energy. Under the impact of the enormous amount of energy and blood essence injected into Lu Qingfeng's body, the conception and governing meridians, as well as a few other important meridians, which had been stuck in Lu Qingfeng's body for many years, and prevented him from breaking through, had begun to loosen up. Lu Qingfeng's heart was filled with wild joy. Vaguely, he could feel that the natural energies around him were slowly merging into his body. This was a scene that only a cultivator of the Xiantian realm could have. So, he decided to just ignore what was happening around him, and focused all his attention on his own body. He kept replenishing his internal energy, cooperating with the hot stream that came from Wu Qi's palm to attack the few extremely important meridians that separated the Hotian realm from the Xiantian realm. Carrying Lu Qingfeng and the 3 black stone tablets, Wu Qi dashed into the woods. Yan Bugui let out a few loud whistles and waved his hands in all directions. The 300 warriors that were following closely behind him were divided into 10 teams under the leadership of the scouting officers, and quickly dispersed into the woods. Yan Bugui led his 7 subordinates, as well as Wu Qi, Lu Qingfeng, Lu Suifeng, and a group of old men who had come here before, and quickly sprinted forward along the same path that they came from. With regards to Yan Bugui's decision to disperse the group, no one had any objections. Even if they used their knees to think, they would understand that by splitting up into a few teams, the chances of everyone escaping would be much higher. Otherwise, if everyone were to stick together, they would be too big of a target, and 300 people in the woods would never be able to escape from the barbarians. Behind them, the dense beating of iron drums could be heard, and the sharp sound of horns could be heard, as if the entire forest was mobilized. While leading the group and sprinting forward, Yan Bugui said in a low voice, "Luckily, we've wiped out all the villages along the way, or else, if we're stopped by those barbarians on the way back, we'll all die here." Another scouting officer smacked his lips and said with a bitter smile, "Judging from the commotion, I'm afraid the dozens of barbarian clans in the vicinity have all been mobilized." "Sai, who asked us to take away these black stone tablets? Those barbarians have treated these treasures as a gift from the heavenly god." Yen Bugui sneered and said, "The treasures of the heaven and earth belong to the virtuous. Do these barbarians deserve to enjoy these treasures? Let's hurry up, as long as we can leave this forest alive and present these 3 black stone tablets to the great general, he will definitely reward us handsomely. We'll split the rewards according to our contributions." When Yen Bugui mentioned the reward of a county, the eyes of Lu Qingfeng, Lu Suifeng, and Lu Ziyuan lit up. A county of the great Yen dynasty. The ones who played the biggest role in snatching the black stone tablets were Lu Qingfeng and Lu Suifeng. Wu Qi, who was carrying the black stone tablets, was the right-hand man of Lu Qingfeng, while the elite guards brought by Lu Suifeng followed him into the cave and wiped out the last barbarians. Those warriors recruited in Little Meng City were just there to play the supporting roles. For them, a generous reward was already a pretty good deal. The reward of a county, even if it was divided among Yen Bugui and the other scouting officers, it would still be a big piece of meat. Lu Suifeng suddenly let out a loud cry. He leaped up and grabbed the 3 black stone tablets on Wu Qi's back. "Wu Qi, the credit belongs to everyone, don't you dare take it all for yourself." Chapter 47. Seeing that Lu Suifeng was fighting for the credit, Yen Bugui raised his eyebrows and said, "Bastard." Yen Bugui was really angry and anxious. He didn't know how many barbarians were going to chase after them. In this forest, barbarians were like fish in water, and their combat strength would at least double. As for the great Yen Kingdom's people outside the forest, once they entered the forest, they would be lucky if they could even use half of their strength. Everyone had to work together to escape from this forest, only then would they have the chance to get the reward. Lu Suifeng suddenly started an internal conflict. Wasn't he just seeking death? Wu Qi's reaction was very fast. As soon as Lu Suifeng's claw reached out, Wu Qi leaped up into the air and kicked out. Then, Wu Qi forcefully kicked Lu Suifeng in the chest. Lu Suifeng let out a shrill cry, and a mouthful of blood sprayed out from his mouth. He was sent flying 70 to 80 feet away by the kick, and his head smashed into a huge tree, nearly killing him. Lu Ziyuan screamed, "Wu Qi, how dare you hurt the Marquis?" Wu Qi fiercely stared at Lu Ziyuan and Yi Yen. Without saying a word, he grabbed Lu Qingfeng and ran forward. A few of Lu Suifeng's guards quickly rushed forward to help Lu Suifeng, who was knocked unconscious. The remaining 30 guards of Lu Suifeng raised their 9-bolts crossbows angrily and were about to pull the trigger. However, Wu Qi's body was very agile. When those guards raised their crossbows, he had already brought Lu Qingfeng behind a big tree. Zhang Hu and Hu Wei followed closely behind Wu Qi and jumped behind the tree. They each had a 9-bolts crossbow in their hands, and they were aiming at Lu Suifeng's guards. In the battle just now, many of Lu Suifeng's guards had died. Zhang Hu and Hu Wei each picked up a 9-bolts crossbow, and it was the perfect time to put them to use. Seeing that a fight was about to break out, a ball of green light shot out from Yen Bugui's back. The wind-breaking wolf let out a furious howl. Yen Bugui shouted sternly, "If anyone dares to make a move, I will immediately strip them of all their titles. I, Yen Bugui, am a man of my word." Wu Qi casually slapped out, pressing down Zhang Hu and Hu Wei's hands. He laughed loudly and said, "Lord Yen, I, Wu Qi, am the most law-abiding." He had never done those messy things. Heaven is my witness, these 3 black stone tablets were snatched from the barbarian's altar by me. Next to Yen Bugui, 7 scouting officers began to glow with a green light, and the shadows of green wind-breaking wolves emerged from their backs. They lined up in a straight line and stood in front of Lu Suifeng's personal guards. Yen Bugui shouted sternly, "Wu Qi is right, he snatched this stone tablet from the barbarians. Lu Suifeng, if you dare to run amok again, this Yen will kill you right now." Once Yen Bugui made his move, Lu Suifeng immediately lost his courage. Hurriedly, he ordered his personal guards to put down their weapons, and obediently followed Yen Bugui and continued running forward. A few men from scouting office stood beside Wu Qi, guarding him tightly, fearing that Lu Suifeng might do something stupid again. All of a sudden, Wu Qi felt a strong yet strong force coming from under his palm. There was a faint airflow circling around Lu Qingfeng's body, and one could see the pale white metal elemental energy and the yellow earth elemental energy slowly being injected into Lu Qingfeng's body. With the help of the blood and qi essence that Wu Qi injected into his body, Lu Qingfeng, who had been stuck at the peak of the Hotian realm for a few years, had finally broken through the barrier between the Xiantian realm and the Hotian realm, successfully stepping into the Xiantian realm. Judging from the nature of the natural energy that Lu Qingfeng's body was actively absorbing, he was actually cultivating with a dual elemental skill of earth and metal. His body was also of both earth and metal elemental. Lu Suifeng and Lu Ziyuan's faces turned pale. Lu Qingfeng had become a Xiantian realm warrior. Putting Lu Suifeng aside, Lu Ziyuan instinctively thought of something. Would the Liang Lu family's attitude towards Lu Qingfeng change because of this? Would the position of the eldest son of the Liang Lu family, who was also Lu Ziyuan's second brother, Lu Ziyuhai, be threatened? Yan Bugui, on the other hand, was overjoyed. There were countless barbarians chasing after them, and this time, these barbarians would definitely use all their strength and methods to hunt them down. At this critical moment, there was one more Xiantian realm warrior in their group. Even if it was just a minor Xiantian warrior of the respiration realm, it would still be a great help to their survival. Congratulations, young Master Lu. Once you step into the Xiantian realm, it's like a carp leaping through the dragon's gate. Yan Bugui immediately congratulated Lu Qingfeng. All the other scouting officers were looking at Lu Qingfeng with envy. Although they were all beast warriors, and with the help of the wind-breaking wolf's soul, they had the combat strength equivalent to the respiration realm of the Xiantian realm. However, their own cultivation level was still at the peak of the Hotian realm. At most, they could only be considered as fake Xiantian warriors. There was a huge difference between them and a real Xiantian warrior like Lu Qingfeng. Lu Qingfeng let out a loud laugh, then he cupped his fist and bowed deeply to Wu Qi. Brother Wu Qi, from now on, you and I will be brothers. Wu Qi forcefully pulled Lu Qingfeng, carried the 3 black stone tablets and started running. While he was running, he shouted, "Don't be so jealous. If we are brothers, then so be it. Let's run for our lives. I can hear something wrong." When Lu Qingfeng heard what Wu Qi said, his expression immediately changed. He grabbed Zhang Hu and Hu Wei, carried both of them and started running for his life. Once he stepped into the Xiantian realm, all the meridians in his body were unobstructed. The internal energy in his body was endless, and the natural energy from the outside world was constantly flowing into his body to replenish his energy consumption. Therefore, even though he was carrying 2 people and running in the woods, he didn't feel tired at all. With a light breath, a stream of internal energy would flow out of his body like a great river. With a casual step, he could cover a distance of a few dozen feet. It was as if he was walking on the wind, and it was an indescribable feeling of ease. Feeling the indescribable freedom and agility of the Xiantian realm, Lu Qingfeng let out a loud laugh and said, "Wu Qi, from now on, Lu Qingfeng will share all my wealth with you." Yan Bugui glared at Lu Suifeng and Lu Ziyuan fiercely, giving them a warning look. After that, he brought them and continued running forward. Behind them, the faint roars of beasts could be heard. After about the time it took for an incense stick to burn, 3 barbarian warriors, who were riding on strange beasts that could grab onto tree trunks and fly in the air, roared furiously and caught up to them. The appearance of these 3 strange beasts was similar to the velociraptors that Wu Qi knew. However, their bodies were covered in pitch-black scales, and there were 3 to 5 sharp horns on their heads. Each of their thick and muscular hind feet had 3 toes, and the toenails were 2 feet long, shining brightly and sharp like blades. The strange beasts leaped in the air, using their hind legs to grab onto the tree trunks that were a few feet above the ground, and using the force, they flew far away. Wherever they went, the 3 strange beasts would leave countless holes on the huge trees that required a few people to wrap their arms around them. The strange beasts had also caught up to them like a whirlwind. Wu Qi and Lu Qingfeng brought Zhang Hu and Hu Wei and walked at the front of the group. At the back of the group were Lu Suifeng and a few other guards with the weakest cultivation level. The three strange beasts suddenly swooped down from the sky, opened their mouths and sprayed out 3 pitch-black water columns. The water columns, which carried a pungent smell, sprayed onto the faces of 7 to 8 guards. No one knew what this black water was, but its corrosive power was even stronger than aqua regia. A few guards of Lu Suifeng let out a few miserable screams, and their skin and flesh melted into poisonous water almost in a blink of an eye. Their bones and internal organs were disintegrated and piled up in the poisonous water. The strange beasts showed their power, and the 3 barbarians, who were surrounded by dark mist, let out long and loud hisses at the same time. Their hisses sounded like the hisses of poisonous pythons, and were unspeakably unpleasant to the ears. Along with the hisses of the 3 barbarians, countless strange poisonous insects fell down from the trees above Wu Qi and the others. Poisonous snakes, caterpillars, scorpions, stick-like insects, strange-shaped poisonous insects that spat out poisonous substances, longhorn beetles that sprayed poisonous water, centipedes with thorns all over their bodies, poisonous moths the size of water tanks, and so on. There were at least 2,000 to 3,000 kinds of strange poisonous insects falling down from the sky. Among them, there were 2 poisonous pythons that were as thick as water buckets and over 40 feet long. They stuck out their long tongues and dropped down from the trees. Lu Ziyuan, who was fleeing in panic, let out a miserable scream. One of the poisonous pythons landed right behind him, and its long tail coiled around Lu Ziyuan's body. The poisonous python tightened its grip, and all the bones in Lu Ziyuan's body started making cracking sounds. A few of his ribs were broken on the spot. Luckily, Yan Bugue came to the rescue in time. He waved the sword in his hand and unleashed a sword beam, cutting the poisonous python into 7 to 8 pieces. Before the poisonous python's head fell to the ground, its sharp fangs scratched Lu Ziyuan's left arm, leaving behind a small wound. Lu Ziyuan's left arm inflated like a balloon, and in the blink of an eye, it turned black and shiny. Yan Bugue shook his head helplessly. With a swing of his sword, he chopped off Lu Ziyuan's shoulder, grabbed him up and threw him to Lu Qingfeng. "Young Master Lu, keep an eye on your brother." With a flip of his hand, Lu Qingfeng grabbed Lu Ziyuan, whose left arm had been chopped off and was screaming in pain. Lu Qingfeng shook his head helplessly, reached out his hand and tapped on Lu Ziyuan's shoulder a few times, stopping the blood from gushing out. With a wave of his sleeve, Wu Qi knocked away all the poisonous insects that were falling down from the sky. With a strange expression on his face, he turned to Lu Ziyuan, sneered, and said, "Sixth young Master Lu, you better behave yourself and show some respect to our young master. Or else, we'll feed you to those giant snakes." Lu Ziyuan's face turned pale with fear. He quickly grabbed Lu Qingfeng and screamed, "Elder brother, I'll listen to you from now on." Yan Bugue brought his 7 subordinates with him. The wind-breaking wolf's shadow emerged from behind his back, and together with 8 sword beams, they leaped towards the 3 barbarians. The 3 strange beasts took a few steps forward, opened their mouths and spat out another 3 streams of black water. Yan Bugue shook his wrist, and a few feet-long sword beam shot out from the tip of his sword, knocking the 3 streams of black water back to where they came from. The black water splashed onto the faces of the 3 strange beasts and the 3 barbarians riding on their backs. The black water did not have any effect on the 3 strange beasts, and they continued leaping forward as if nothing had happened. However, the barbarians riding on their backs let out a miserable howl, as they too were corroded by the black water and turned into rotten meat. The strange beasts roared angrily, and their 2 feet tall bodies dashed forward. The sharp horns on their heads collided with the sword beams launched by Yan Bugue and his men. Along with a loud boom, the heads of the 3 strange beasts were smashed into pieces by the sword beams, while Yan Bugue and his men were knocked back by the huge impact. The scene was thrown into chaos. A cold light flickered in Wu Qi's eyes. He threw a glance at Lu Suifeng, who was hiding behind his guards and yelling for his guards to protect him. Suddenly, he flicked his finger. A tiny bug, about the size of a green bean and covered with inch-long poisonous hair, fell from the sky. Wu Qi controlled the bug with his finger, and it shot out with lightning speed, right into Lu Suifeng's ear. The poisonous hair of the bug suddenly stood up and pierced through Lu Suifeng's skull. The poison took effect, and Lu Suifeng fell to the ground without even making a sound. Lu Suifeng's guards let out a shrill cry, "Young master." Wu Qi narrowed his eyes and pursed his lips into a smile. Now, there was no one left to fight for the credit. Chapter 48. In the open space in the woods, a group of people with ragged clothes and full of scars were lying on the ground. Since the night before yesterday, when they had defeated the last barbarian hunting team, Wu Qi and his men had not heard any terrifying roars from the barbarians for more than a dozen hours. In this forest, the strength of the barbarians was indeed extraordinary. If it weren't for Yan Bugui and the other beast warriors, as well as the two Xiantiang warriors, Wu Qi and Lu Qingfeng, they would have been killed by the barbarians long ago. Under the big tree, the remaining 5 right-hand men of Lu Suifeng were staring at the ground blankly. Lu Suifeng's naked body was lying on the ground. Wu Qi was diligently mixing some spices and herbs he picked from the woods together, roughly making a strong preservative and applying it on Lu Suifeng's body. During the 20 days of fleeing, Lu Suifeng's right-hand men refused to leave the dead Lu Suifeng behind. No matter what, they had to bring his body out of the woods. Wu Qi was afraid that Lu Suifeng's rotting body would emit a foul smell and attract all kinds of strange beasts that had a keen sense of smell. Therefore, he volunteered to do the preservative treatment for Lu Suifeng's body. "Although your death has a little bit to do with me, you still owe me a big favor for helping you deal with your funeral." While smearing the paste of preservative on Lu Suifeng's body, Wu Qi thought to himself, "You can be buried with a fragrant smell, you don't have to enter the coffin with a stinky smell. You owe me a huge favor. In your next life, you have to be my slave." After dealing with Lu Suifeng's body with great effort, Wu Qi found a huge tree vine and split it open with his palm. Instantly, clear water gushed out. Grabbing a handful of locust fruits and washing his hands, Wu Qi grabbed the tree vine and drank a few mouthfuls of water. Under the tree, the old devil, who was as skinny as a skeleton, and whose lower body was swollen and shiny, started to moan. He looked at Wu Qi expectantly, hoping that Wu Qi would give him a sip of water. Wu Qi hesitated for a while, but he still rolled a big leaf into a cup and fed the old devil a few mouthfuls of water. Greedily gulping down half a liter of water in one gulp, old devil almost burst into tears. The strong wind tests the strong grass, and time reveals a man's heart. "Little friend Wu Qi, I really can't thank you enough." Wu Qi looked at old devil, who had suffered countless hardships along the way. He breathed out a deep sigh and said, "You don't have to thank me. Even if there is a wild dog lying in front of me, I'll still feed it some water and rice. Sigh, my biggest shortcoming is that I'm too soft-hearted." Shaking his head, Wu Qi stood up and walked towards Lu Qingfeng. While walking, he sighed and said, "You, old devil, are not a good man, why should I care about you? I'm too soft-hearted, and I can't bear to see you suffer, that's why I fed you water. Also, your Marquis is my young master's enemy. It doesn't matter if he's dead, why should I help him with the smell of a dead body? I'm just too soft-hearted." After listening to Wu Qi's words, old devil had a bad feeling in his heart. But after all, it was Wu Qi who fed him water. Old devil could only stare at Wu Qi's back with a complicated look, while cursing the remaining 5 right-hand men of Lu Suifeng in his mind. These 5 men had been busy taking care of the dead Lu Suifeng along the way, but they had left old devil, a living man, as if he was a bag. If it wasn't for Wu Qi taking care of him occasionally, he would have died in the woods. Looking at the 5 right-hand men with hatred, old devil swore in his mind, "Even if I have to die, I'll drag the 5 of you down with me." Wu Qi hastily returned to Lu Qingfeng, who was sitting cross-legged with his eyes closed, and placed the 3 black stone tablets on his shoulder. Along the way, Wu Qi had been trying to decipher the secret of the black stone tablets. However, there were no words on the black stone tablets, and no ripples of energy could be sensed from them. His divine sense was not strong enough to penetrate into the black stone tablets and find out the secret behind them. Even after a long journey, he still couldn't figure out the use of these black stone tablets. A treasure that could make Jing Ke, the great general of Great Yan dynasty, keep thinking about it, and even put a bounty on an entire province as his fief, must be something good. But because he didn't have enough strength, he couldn't get any benefits from the black stone tablets. Therefore, Wu Qi didn't have any resentment. As mentioned in Scroll of Stealing, there were too many good treasures under the heaven, and not every single one of them was destined to be yours. In order to steal the great Tao of heaven and earth, one must first learn how to give up. Those who didn't know how to give up would only be distracted by everything under the heaven, and eventually bring trouble to themselves. Forcefully slapping on the 3 black stone tablets, Wu Qi sprung up and said with a low voice, "Your Excellency Yan, we've rested enough. Let's continue our journey. Let's work hard for another 2 days, and we'll be able to leave this forest." Yan Bugue looked up at the sky. The sun was hanging right above their heads, and the golden sunlight was shining through the branches, turning into countless light swords and piercing into the dark forest. He nodded his head, stood up and said, "All right, those who don't want to be killed by those barbarians, let's move out now." Lu Suifeng's right-hand men stood up speechlessly. 2 right-hand men used a crude stretcher to carry Lu Suifeng's dead body, while the other man roughly grabbed Old Devil and placed him on his shoulder. After that, the group continued their journey. Old Devil's body was in extreme pain from the violent action of the right-hand man. He groaned with great effort, and his eyes were filled with madness and hatred. Lu Ziyuan, who had lost an arm, was holding tightly onto Lu Qingfeng's sleeve, fearing that his big brother wouldn't bring him along. The horror of this forest had scared Lu Ziyuan so much that he felt like his soul was about to leave his body. Lu Suifeng was killed by the poisonous bugs, and his hanger-ons and guards were killed one after another by the barbarians' strange methods. If it weren't for Lu Qingfeng helping him a few times, Lu Ziyuan's bones would have been beating a drum by now. In this forest, Lu Qingfeng was Lu Ziyuan's only hope for survival. Wu Qi threw a cold glance at Lu Ziyuan, who was shivering from head to toe. He moved closer to Lu Qingfeng and said with a low voice, "I'm willing to bet that once we leave this forest, young master's 6th brother will immediately turn against you. Do you believe me?" Lu Ziyuan's body trembled, and he quickly said with a low voice, "No, he won't. How could I do that? From now on, Big Brother is my big brother. No matter what happens in the family, I'll listen to Big Brother, I'll listen to everything Big Brother says." Lu Qingfeng let out a hollow laugh and didn't say anything. Wu Qi let out a hollow laugh and didn't bring up this topic again. The rest of the journey was very smooth. Except for 2 more bird barbarian vultures and 3 barbarian beast warriors who found them, and 2 more of Lu Suifeng's hanger-ons were killed in a fierce battle, the group finally managed to walk out of this forest that had devoured countless human lives. After waiting for 2 days and 2 nights at the agreed meeting point of the scouting office, only 6 teams had successfully walked out of the forest, and all of them had lost around 70 to 80% of their members. There were only 17 scouting officers left under Yan Bugue's command. As for those warriors who left in a mighty manner, only 65 of them managed to walk out of the forest. After counting the number of people and making sure that all the others had died in the forest, Yan Bugue let out a long sigh and shed a few drops of tears towards the forest. After that, he returned to his usual serious face. "Let's part ways here. Remember everyone's place of origin and name. The reward that you deserve for your contribution will be sent out as soon as possible." Yan Bugue snatched the 3 black stone tablets from Wu Qi's shoulder, gave Wu Qi and Lu Qingfeng a deep look, then said with a deep voice, "The eldest son of Liang Lu clan, Lu Qingfeng? You should be the one with the greatest contribution this time. Go back and wait, you're going to get a surprise. Lu Qingfeng bowed solemnly at Yan Bugui, and Yan Bugui returned the gesture. After that, he ordered his subordinates to register the names of all the warriors, then left the place in a hurry with the 3 black stone tablets. The journey from the Lu kingdom to the imperial city of Great Yan dynasty required them to cross 7 vassal kingdoms. It was a long journey with many twists and turns. No matter how fast they traveled, it would take them at least half a year to reach the imperial city of Great Yan dynasty, Ji City. The so-called reward would be sent out as soon as possible, and it would take at least 1 year for them to return. All the warriors on the spot breathed out a long sigh of relief at the same time. They turned around and stared at the woods behind them, then suddenly shouted and yelled at the same time. This time, they were forcefully summoned by scouting officers and forced to venture into the woods. Although they managed to come out alive in the end, many of their acquaintances and best friends were buried in this woods. Those who survived would be rewarded by the chief general of Great Yan dynasty personally. The dead, on the other hand, were dead. At most, they would receive a negligible amount of compensation. However, most of the warriors who lived in Little Meng City were fugitives who lived on the edge of a blade, and they didn't have many families to take care of. So, if they died, they would just die, and the pension was meaningless to them. Wu Qi waited until these warriors had vented out their anger, then he gave Lu Qingfeng a powerful kick on his calf. He pouted at these warriors, then pushed Lu Qingfeng, who had a silly smile on his face, a few steps forward with his shoulder. Lu Qingfeng suddenly came to his senses. He bowed deeply at these warriors and said, "Fellow warriors, I, Qingfeng, am the acting mayor of Little Meng City. It is fate that brought us together in this difficult time. All of you have great abilities, but in the end, you will wither together with the grass and trees. It is a pity. Currently, in Qingfeng's mansion, we still lack a lot of followers. I, Qingfeng, am waiting for you. I hope you can lend me a hand." Wu Qi stood beside Lu Qingfeng, smiled and unleashed his aura of respiration tier of Xiantian realm. The faint heavenly energy turned into a white mist and slowly swirled around Wu Qi. The faint pressure made all the warriors in front of him tremble. A warrior of Xiantian realm. These warriors looked at Wu Qi with respect and envy. These warriors were all quick-witted. They had heard what Yan Bugui said to Lu Qingfeng just now. There was a surprise waiting for Lu Qingfeng. As the acting mayor, what kind of surprise could he have? Without needing much effort from Wu Qi and Lu Qingfeng, among these surviving warriors, a total of 37 of them had already acknowledged Lu Qingfeng as their disciples, and became his right-hand men. As they were able to walk out from that frightening forest, these warriors were either at the peak of Hotian realm, or they were just a step away from the peak of Hotian realm. In an instant, the strength of Lu Qingfeng's followers had increased tremendously, and they now had the aura of a young master from a wealthy family. After a few laughs, Lu Qingfeng happily led the warriors and headed back to Little Meng City. After being away for almost 2 months, Lu Qingfeng was really worried about what was going on in the city. When they were about 3 miles away from Little Meng City, they saw Xiaohe wielding his halberd and leading a large group of city guards, blocking the east, south, and west gates of Little Meng City. They were yelling for war. Wu Qi and Lu Qingfeng were shocked. They immediately rushed forward and asked what was going on. After hearing what Xiaohe said, both of them became furious. Wu Qi let out a loud shout and jumped onto the top of the city gate, kicking a few guards of Lu Suifeng off the city wall. "Xiaohe, attack the city. Anyone who dares to resist will be killed." The furious Wu Qi immediately gave the order to attack the city. Chapter 49. Although Xiaohe was a simple-minded person, he still tried his best to use the shortest words to report to Wu Qi and Lu Qingfeng what had happened in the past 2 months. Yan Bugui had taken away all the warriors in Little Meng City. Therefore, the group of guards under the command of Lu Zhong had become the strongest armed force in Little Meng City. Be it in terms of equipment, morale, cultivation level, or training level, this group of guards had the power to defeat thousands of city guards of Little Meng City. Besides having a strong force, Lu Zhong also carried the official document and token of Lu Suifeng as the military supervisory officer, which gave him the right to supervise the city guards of Little Meng City. After Wu Qi and Lu Qingfeng left, Lu Zhong became even more domineering. Clearly, he had asked those accountants who were in charge of auditing the accounts to falsify the accounts on the spot and blame it on Wu Qi and Lu Qingfeng. Then, he burned all the original account books into ashes. He had bribed and threatened some wealthy merchants in the city, framing Wu Qi and Lu Qingfeng, and had gotten over 100 evidence of Wu Qi and Lu Qingfeng taking bribes, raping innocent girls, and disturbing the people. Every single one of them had a crime and a witness, and it had become an ironclad case. In the end, he gathered all the former city guards, captains who were chased away by Wu Qi, and asked them to stand out and push all the blame onto Lu Qingfeng. When Yi Yan was the mayor, the burglary of the mayor's mansion, and so on, were all handled by Wu Qi and Lu Qingfeng. After spending over 1 month, Lu Zhong had laid out a nearly perfect trap, a trap that could make Wu Qi and Lu Qingfeng die a graveless death. After that, he couldn't wait to take the title of military supervisory officer and forcefully take over the power of the city guards of Little Meng City. Those former city guards who had been driven away were now his pawns, and they happily followed Lu Zhong to take over the power of the city guards. Although Xiao He was simple-minded, he still obeyed Lu Qingfeng's orders. He controlled the city guards tightly, not allowing them to clash with Lu Zhong's men. However, Lu Zhong was getting more and more outrageous. When Lu Zhong brought his men and broke the limbs of a few city guards who refused to submit to him, Meng Xiaobai and the other villagers of Meng Village were the first to explode. The simple and honest villagers of Meng Village would never meet someone like Lu Zhong. For the past month, all kinds of messy things had happened, and the people of Meng Village had had enough of their boredom. No one knew who started the fight, but the villagers of Meng Village led nearly 1,000 city guards and the guards led by Lu Zhong. In this fight, more than 800 city guards were killed on the spot. Among them, there were more than 70 people from Meng Village. On the other hand, the guards led by Lu Zhong only suffered heavy injuries and several tens of light injuries. The powerful 9-bolt crossbows caused huge casualties to the city guards, but also preserved the strength of Lu Zhong's subordinates. More than 200 city guards, including Meng Xiaobai, were arrested and thrown into the city jail. Lu Zhong tortured them without restraint, torturing them all day long. Rumor has it that some of them were beaten to death. From time to time, Lu Zhong would ask his men to drag a few dead bodies out and hang them in front of the city gate as a demonstration. Because the villagers of Meng Village had taken the lead to rebel against Lu Zhong had made up a false accusation, accusing Lu Qingfeng and Wu Qi of inciting an army to rebel and conspiring against the law. Those former leaders of city guards and some wealthy merchants in the city had all signed their names on the official document. Things were getting out of hand. When Lu Zhong brought a large group of men to capture Lao He and Xiao He immediately brought the rest of the city guards and rushed out of Little Meng City. Then, he gathered all the men from the new recruit training camp located in the woods outside the city and besieged Little Meng City. The number of soldiers led by Xiao He was huge, but they weren't well trained, and they lacked armors and weapons. The guards led by Lu Zhong were strong and well-equipped, and they even had the help of the private guards of some wealthy merchants in the city. But, their numbers were small, and they could only barely defend the city. Neither side dared to strike recklessly. This stalemate had lasted for 7 days. When Wu Qi heard the news, he was enraged, especially when he heard that the villagers of Meng Village had been killed, and Meng Xiaobai had been imprisoned and tortured. This made his anger explode like a bomb. After jumping onto the city wall and knocking away a few guards, Wu Qi immediately gave the order to attack the city. When Lu Qingfeng heard the whole story, he furrowed his brows, gritted his teeth and said, "The barbarians have retaliated by attacking Little Meng City and killing a few hundred of Marquis Lu's personal guards. The city wall of Little Meng City has been breached, and the wealthy merchants in the city have suffered a great loss. With a fierce killing intent on his face, Lu Qingfeng shouted, "Attack the city! Attack the city! Anyone who dares to resist will be killed." Xiaohe couldn't hold back the anger in his heart any longer. Since he had benefited from Wu Qi and Lu Qingfeng, he immediately swung his iron halberd and shouted. Over 20,000 city guards immediately let out an uproar, and Qi began his attack on Little Meng City. Wu Qi went straight into a deserted area, and started killing without restraint on top of the city gate. He struck out with both of his palms, and each of his palms carried a force of a few hundred kilograms. Although those personal guards of Lu Suifeng were all elite soldiers, how could they defend against Wu Qi, a warrior of Xiantian level? One after another, those personal guards were sent flying away by Wu Qi's powerful palms, and the gentle innate water energy penetrated into their bodies, shattering all their internal organs. Lu Zhong, who was wearing a red robe and was standing on top of the city gate and cursing with Xiaohe, had his face turned pale. Under the protection of a group of personal guards, he quickly retreated, and at the same time, he pointed his finger at Wu Qi and shouted, "Wu Qi, where is our marquis? You are back, but where is our marquis? If you dare to mess with us, our marquis will never let you go. Who do you think you are? How dare you provoke our marquis?" With a kick, Wu Qi killed one of the personal guards, then he stared at Lu Zhong and laughed, "What bullshit marquis? Lu Suifeng was killed by the venomous bugs released by those barbarians in the woods, and his body is starting to smell. Why are you still here? You better think about how you are going to explain to Lord Puyang first. He's dead." Lu Zhong's face instantly turned green. He plopped down on the ground and let out a hoarse scream, "Dead? Impossible. The Marquis was protected by 2 Xiantian-level warriors, how could he be killed by those barbarians?" Outside the city gate, Lu Qingfeng strode to the 3 right-hand men of Lu Suifeng, and with a flash of light, he cut off the necks of the 3 right-hand men. He grabbed Lu Suifeng's dead body and threw it towards the top of the city gate. He shouted, "Lu Suifeng's dead body is right here, Lu Zhong, how dare you go against me? You old dog, a lowly man who is even worse than a fart, how dare you go against me?" Lu Suifeng's dead body fell heavily on the top of the city gate and rolled around for a few times. When Lu Zhong saw the face of his young master, he screamed out in pain, "Marquis, you're dead, what should I do now? My master will kill my whole family." Sob, sob, according to your plan, it took me a lot of effort to frame Lu Qingfeng with enough crimes to kill him. How did you die? How am I going to explain to my master now that you're dead? Not only Lu Zhong was on the verge of breaking down, all the personal guards of Lu Suifeng were also in a panic. As a servant of a wealthy family, the lives of these personal guards were tied together with Lu Suifeng's. As long as Lu Suifeng was alive, they would be rich, if Lu Suifeng was dead, they would die together with him. Clanging sounds could be heard, and more than half of the personal guards dropped their weapons onto the ground. Their souls were almost frozen. Lu Qingfeng stomped on the head of Old Devil, who was lying on the ground and couldn't move, turning his head into a smashed watermelon. Lu Qingfeng shouted, "Shit, the barbarians are attacking the city, and Old Devil is dead. Boys, let's kill our way into the city, and all the wealth of those wealthy merchants will be yours." Lu Qingfeng had really gone all out. Lu Zhong had framed him in Little Meng City. If he didn't fight back, would he really have to wait for Lu Zhong to accuse him of all kinds of crimes? The wealthy merchants in Little Meng City dared to collude with Lu Zhong and frame him, the acting mayor. What was the point of keeping these wealthy merchants? Just put all the blame on the barbarians. After all, Little Meng City was often besieged by barbarians. So what if a few wealthy merchants were killed? After killing all the wealthy merchants in Little Meng City, not long after, there would be new merchants coming to Little Meng City like flies smelling rotten meat. They didn't care about the prosperity of Little Meng City being affected. Killing all these rich merchants and using their wealth to exchange for the loyalty of the city guards was the most appropriate course of action. Moreover, these city guards had done such a shady business under his command. Why would he be afraid that they wouldn't follow him wholeheartedly? What was this called? This was the proof of loyalty. So what if he killed all the wealthy merchants in Little Meng City? A faint yellowish energy was gathering around his body. Lu Qingfeng circulated his energy and strode to the city gate of Little Meng City, then he punched the center of the city gate. When Yi Yan was the mayor of Little Meng City, this city gate had been in disrepair for years. How could it withstand the attack from a warrior of respiration level? With just a punch, the city gate was shattered into pieces. Countless fragments flew out and killed dozens of private guards of the wealthy merchants. Lu Qingfeng waved his hand and shouted, "Surround the city, no one is allowed to enter or leave. Wu Qi, keep an eye on the sky above the city. Don't let a single messenger pigeon, sparrowhawk, or eagle leave the city. Stop all the birds. Kill, 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 kill all the wealthy merchants in Little Meng City, and share all their wealth with our men." Xiaohe let out a wild roar and immediately led a few thousand city guards into the city. Zhang Hu and Hu Wei each led a team and rushed into the city from the other two city gates. Lu Qingfeng turned around and came in front of those warriors who had just submitted to him. He stared at these right-hand men, whose faces had turned red, and who were surrounded by boiling blood, and shouted, "Follow me, and you will have all the riches in your hands. Those who submit to me will prosper, and those who go against me will die today." With a gaze as sharp as lightning, Lu Qingfeng fiercely glanced at those warriors who didn't submit to him just now. In such a situation, how could those warriors dare to hesitate? One after another, they bowed deeply toward Lu Qingfeng and said in a loud voice, "Greetings, Master. Master, please give us your orders." With another group of powerful warriors under his command, Lu Qingfeng let out a long laugh and said, "Lead the soldiers and follow me into the city. Those who go against me, kill them all." Clenching his teeth tightly, Lu Qingfeng turned to Lu Ziyuan, whose face had turned pale, and shouted, "Don't force me. Don't force me like this. Don't force me like you did when I was young. Or else, I will kill you. Sixth brother Lu, listen to me. If you force me again, I will kill you." With a fierce slap, Lu Qingfeng sent Lu Ziyuan flying far away. After that, he ordered a few right-hand men to tie Lu Ziyuan up tightly. After that, he led a large group of soldiers and entered the city through the last city gate. Wu Qi was running around the city while laughing out loud. From time to time, there would be all kinds of messenger pigeons, sparrowhawks, and eagles flying out from some luxurious mansions, but all of them were easily killed by Wu Qi. All the houses in Little Meng City had their doors tightly shut, and no one dared to go in or out. Around the other mansions, the sound of killing could be heard. Chapter 50. The sky above Little Meng City was filled with dark smoke. All the shops and mansions in the city had been looted by the city guards. A huge amount of gold, silver, and jewelry were piled up on the drill ground of the city guards. Lao He, who was sweating profusely, was distributing these items evenly according to the number of people in each battalion. Deputy generals, lieutenants, and soldiers were distributed equally according to the number of people. Heavy gold beads, silver ingots, large strings of copper coins, sparkling and translucent pearls, sparkling gems, expensive furs and silks, rare spirit medicines and spirit stones. Dozens of barbarian hunters and herb gatherers were estimating the value of these items and distributing them evenly. Regardless of officers or soldiers, they were holding huge piles of wealth that they couldn't earn back even after decades of hard work. They were staring at Lu Qingfeng, who was standing on the drill ground, and cheering, "Long live the king." The cheers of "Die for young master" resounded through the sky. The morale, vigor, and wildness of these 28,000 city guards were boiling. At this moment, even if the king of the Lu kingdom was here, he would be torn apart by these crazy soldiers. Leading a team of soldiers, Wu Qi was hurriedly picking up the dead bodies on the street and transporting them into the woods outside the city. In just one night, these thousands of dead bodies would be eaten by the wild beasts in the woods, and not even a hair would be left. Hundreds of wealthy merchants who were doing business in Little Meng City were slaughtered by the crazy city guards. Not a single one of them was spared. From Lu Zhong, who had been chopped into meat paste, they found the papers signed by these merchants. Basically, all of these merchants were standing on the opposite side of Lu Qingfeng, cooperating with Lu Zhong to sue Lu Qingfeng. Looking at another cart of dead bodies being pushed out of Little Meng City, Wu Qi put his palms together and chanted, Amitabha, without any sincerity. The earlier you die, the earlier you can reincarnate. Don't stay in this world and become an evil spirit. This is the end of your life. In your next life, try to be a happy man. Zhang Hu looked at Wu Qi in astonishment. Brother Wu Qi, what does Amitabha Buddha mean? He looked at Zhang Hu with even more astonishment. Did the people here not know the meaning of Amitabha Buddha? Wu Qi blinked his eyes and explained to Zhang Hu in a serious manner, it doesn't mean anything. It's just my catchphrase. It's no different from, fuck your mother. Zhang Hu nodded in realization. He looked at another cart of corpses being pushed out of the city and nodded with a grim smile. Amitabha. The fire in Little Meng City lasted for 2 days and 2 nights before it finally died down. All the wealthy merchants in the city, along with all the servants and guards, were wiped out. All of Lu Suifeng's guards were also killed. The city wall of Little Meng City was broken by Wu Qi and his men, and those crude weapons and armors were thrown all over the ground. The storeroom of the barbarian quarters of the general's office was opened, and the heads of the barbarians who were paid by the villagers were taken out. After being pickled with lime and herbs for so many days, the heads of the barbarians had almost dried up. They were hung on top of the city wall in rows, as evidence of the barbarian invasion. As for why the heads of those barbarians who invaded the city 2 nights ago would shrivel up so quickly after they were chopped off, Wu Qi didn't give any explanation. Also, none of the residents of Little Meng City were stupid enough to ask Wu Qi about this. In short, Little Meng City was once again invaded by the barbarians. The outer wall of the city was breached, all the guards of Marquis Lu Suifeng were killed, all the wealthy merchants in the city were robbed, and all the storerooms in Little Meng City were robbed by the barbarians as well. Lu Qingfeng's warning letter to the capital had been sent out by a fast horse that traveled 200 miles at the fastest speed. About 2 to 3 months later, this letter would arrive at the capital. As for whether Lu Suifeng's bones could be used to make soup after 2 to 3 months, Wu Qi didn't mention this, and Lu Qingfeng didn't put it in his heart either. With these 2 to 3 months of buffer time, all the traces would be covered up. During the process of Lu Zhong framing Lu Qingfeng, all the former generals of the city guards were in cahoots with Lu Zhong, and all the generals and their families were wiped out. Under the threat of Lu Zhong's power, all the officials in Little Meng City had signed on the framing letter. These officials were also killed by the barbarians, and all the officials were replaced by the new right-hand men recruited by Lu Qingfeng. Within 3 days, all the power in Little Meng City had fallen into the hands of Lu Qingfeng, and all the official positions were under Lu Qingfeng's control. 28,000 city guards were stationed in Little Meng City. 8,000 of them were the city guards of Little Meng City, and 12,000 of them were Lu Qingfeng's personal guards and stationed in the mayor's mansion. As for the last 8,000 soldiers, they simply changed their identity and formed a group of 8,000 barbarian hunters under the leadership of one of Zhang Hu's old brothers. This 8,000 barbarian hunter team was the largest barbarian hunter team in the history of Little Meng City. No matter it was Lu Qingfeng's right-hand men, or the 28,000 city guards, from top to bottom, all of them were fed by Lu Qingfeng with gold, silver, and jewelry. Their hands were stained with the blood of those wealthy merchants, former generals of city guards, and the former officials of Little Meng City. All of them had joined Lu Qingfeng's pirate ship, and they had no choice but to follow him. 3 days after the barbarian attack, Lao He led a group of forcibly recruited civilian workers and began to repair the broken city wall. Meanwhile, Lu Qingfeng was in the mayor's mansion, gathering all the leaders of the local clans who were born and bred in Little Meng City, including a few elders from Meng Village. A wooden table was placed in the middle of the hall, and Lu Qingfeng, who was wearing a luxurious robe, was kneeling behind it, looking at all the leaders of the local clans kneeling in the hall with a smile on his face. Although the power of these elders and clan leaders couldn't be compared to those wealthy merchants who came from outside, they represented the tens of thousands of people who were born and bred in Little Meng City, and they were the real local tyrants of Little Meng City. Wu Qi looked at all these people in the hall, and with a big smile on his face, he placed the official documents on the table in front of them. Fellow clan leaders, elders, what our young master wants to say is that Little Meng City has suffered a great loss this time. Every year, the trade between Little Meng City and the outside world can bring us a huge amount of tax and profit. But all this time, this profit has been taken away by those people. Clearing his throat, Wu Qi looked at all the leaders of the local clans, who had a weird expression on their faces. He sighed and said, "You're the locals of Little Meng City, and you've been living here for hundreds of years. But during these hundreds of years, what have you gained? At most, you can open up a restaurant, and let the girls in your clan do the dirty work in exchange for some money. Or, your children can join the teams of barbarian hunters, herb gatherers, hunters, and mine explorers, risking their lives in Meng Mountains in exchange for some insignificant commission. But those wealthy merchants who came from outside, they will buy all the rare and precious treasures that your children have worked so hard for. Once they are shipped out of Little Meng City, they will get a huge sum of money, enough to feed your entire clan for more than 10 years. They give you a few copper coins in their left hand, and a few gold ingots in their right hand. They have been exploiting you, bullying you. As the owners of Little Meng City, you can't be the owner of Little Meng City." An elder of Meng Village stood up, bowed toward Wu Qi, and said with a deep and trembling voice, "Little brother Wu Qi, you're one of us from Meng Village. Tell us, whatever young Master Lu wants us to do, we'll do it." Wu Qi smiled, took a few steps back, and stood next to Lu Qingfeng. He signed an official document, which, if leaked, would be enough to put Lu Ziyuan and his father to eternal damnation. With this official document in hand, the sixth young master of Lu family was firmly tied to Lu Qingfeng's chariot. Little Meng City had completely become the world of Wu Qi and Lu Qingfeng. Chapter 51. Everything under the heavens is for profit, and everything under the heavens is for profit. 2 months ago, Little Meng City was invaded by the barbarians, and the rich merchants were slaughtered, their blood flowing like a river, and their corpses piled up like a mountain. 2 months later, countless merchants from all over the world came back, and once again opened up shop in Little Meng City, doing business again. But this time, these merchants couldn't do business anymore. They could only buy all the rare and precious items from the merchants of Little Meng City, and make a profit from the price difference. Lu Qingfeng knew about the market price of these rare and precious items from all over the world. He allowed these merchants to keep double the profit, and all the rest of the profit went to Little Meng City. In these 2 months, the tax collected by Little Meng City was equivalent to the tax collected by Yi Yan and the other former mayor for 1.5 years. The treasury of Little Meng City was quickly replenished, and Lu Qingfeng began to ambitiously prepare to rebuild the walls of Little Meng City. He wanted to build a wall made of pure stone that was strong enough to defend against the barbarians' attack. Also, the new wall would spread out to cover a larger area, preparing for the future expansion of Little Meng City. With the endless rare and precious items from Meng Mountain as his backing, Lu Qingfeng had the intention to develop Little Meng City into a prosperous city, a city that could be considered as a big city even in the Lu Kingdom, and not this deformed and prosperous city that was regarded as a barbarian city by the people. On top of the city gate, 2 serving ladies were unfolding a 10 feet wide scroll. On the scroll, a brand new city plan was drawn with exquisite strokes. With a flushed face, Lu Qingfeng was standing in front of the scroll with his chest puffed out. He was pointing at the scroll, and was thinking about how grand the new Little Meng City would be in the future. Wu Qi was chatting with Lu Qingfeng. He tilted his head and stared at the main road that led to the outside of the mountain, his brows knitted together. In these 2 months, Wu Qi had gradually reached the limit of the respiration state through absorbing the essence of the innate water serpent's elixir. According to his estimation, with the help of this serpent core and the 2,000 water elemental energy stones he stole from Little Meng City's treasury, any ordinary cultivator could easily break through the embryonic breath tier of Xiantian realm, and perhaps even form the Jin Dan. However, the cultivation technique of Scroll of Stealing was very mysterious and unique. In the realm of Xiantian, the Scroll of Stealing emphasized on accumulating one's cultivation base, as it would lay down the perfect foundation for future cultivation. Taking the Meridian cultivating tier as an example, ordinary Xiantian cultivators could only strengthen their meridians up to 9 times. However, according to the Scroll of Stealing, it was recommended to use innate water energy to strengthen the meridians up to 108 times. Judging from this, if he wanted to improve his innate water energy to the embryonic breath of innate realm, Wu Qi would need at least 20 times more spiritual stones than he did now. But in Little Meng City, there was no way he could find so many water elemental energy stones. If he wanted to get a better cultivation condition, the most convenient way was to join a sect of cultivators in this world. After talking with Lu Qingfeng for the past 2 months, Wu Qi had learned that there were sects of cultivators in this world, and all of them were extremely powerful. However, all the sects of cultivators relied on the Great Yan dynasty to survive, and the founders of all sects of cultivators were either the sons or followers of Emperor Yan Dan. For example, the background of Scouting Office was actually a very powerful sect of cultivators in the Great Yan dynasty, and its founder was the general of the Great Yan dynasty, Jing Ku. Most of the other sects were the same, and the founders of these sects were closely related to the Great Yan dynasty. The sects of cultivators were under the strict control of the Great Yan dynasty, and the techniques of cultivation were never taught to anyone easily. If one wanted to become a disciple of a sect of cultivators, he or she must be a genius with great talent, or the son of a noble family of the Great Yan dynasty. The noble family of the Great Yan dynasty, not the noble family of the Lu kingdom. Those marquises and aristocratic families of the Lu kingdom were nothing in the eyes of the Great Yan dynasty. Wu Qi carried the mark of Lu Qingfeng on his body, so it was extremely difficult for him to become a disciple of a sect of cultivators of the Great Yan dynasty. The Great Yan dynasty would never allow the follower of the illegitimate son of a small aristocratic family of a vassal kingdom to become a disciple of a sect. A disciple like this could bring instability to the vassal kingdoms, and destroy the rule of the Great Yan dynasty. Therefore, it was extremely difficult for Wu Qi to join a sect of cultivators of the Great Yan dynasty. What a headache! Wu Qi knitted his brows. He stared at Lu Qingfeng, who was talking with confidence and composure, and felt puzzled. Why was he the illegitimate son of Lady Rung? If he was the illegitimate son of Yan Dan, how great would that be? Wouldn't he be able to join a sect of cultivators with ease? Sighing, Wu Qi shook his head and decided to take his time to make a decision. For the time being, there was no need to rush. Throwing away the complicated thoughts in his mind, Wu Qi focused his mind and prepared to listen to Lu Qingfeng's design of the new city. Just when he was about to retract his gaze and look at the scroll, he suddenly saw a cloud of sharp smoke rising up into the sky from the main road in the distance. It seemed like a large army was approaching. With a leap, Wu Qi leaped up to the top of the city gate, raised his head and looked in that direction. He saw a blood-red torrent rushing towards him. Hastily, Wu Qi let out a sharp whistle and shouted, "Close all the city gates. All crossbowmen and archers, stand guard on the top of the city wall." Lu Qingfeng had also heard the rapid clatter of hooves coming from afar. Hastily, he sent away the 2 serving ladies, leaped up to the top of the city gate and looked into the distance. He squinted his eyes and looked into the distance, then he sneered and said, "Look at the color of their armor, they are Lord Puyang's men." A large group of city guards rushed up to the top of the city wall with their bows and crossbows, lining up in a straight line. Behind the archers, there was a dense group of soldiers holding heavy swords and shields. After 2 months of cruel training, the soldiers of the city guard army had gained some power and influence. Meng Xiaobai and a group of men from Meng village had also rushed up to the top of the city wall. These men from Meng village were holding 2-inch thick iron shields in their hands, and they were carrying huge axes on their shoulders. They were wearing thick and heavy armor made of pure steel, and they looked like a group of moving steel puppets, giving off an intimidating aura. Wu Qi looked at Meng Xiaobai with a pleased expression. This little guy is really good. 2 months ago, he was the one who had instigated the city guards to fight with Lu Zhong. After that, he was imprisoned and tortured by Lu Zhong, but he didn't even beg for mercy. No matter how many times they tortured him, he didn't even let out a groan. This little guy can be used. Wu Qi was afraid that he would do something reckless again, so he quickly shouted, Xiaobai, follow young master. You're not even an adult yet, why are you following the adults? Meng Xiaobai retorted unwillingly, but the men from Meng village burst into laughter and chased him back, forcing him to follow behind Lu Qingfeng. Meng Xiaobai kept mumbling to himself, then walked angrily to the entrance of the city gate. He stared at the group in the distance, not even bothering to look at Wu Qi. Little guy, you've learned how to be angry? Wu Qi laughed out loud. The sound of hoofbeats was loud and clear like thunder. In just a quarter of an hour, more than 6,000 blood-armored cavalrymen had arrived. These cavalrymen were all wearing red armors and riding on 2 horses. Their armors and robes were covered with dust. Obviously, they didn't rest during their journey to Little Meng City. These valiant cavalrymen formed a neat formation outside of the city wall. A murderous aura rose from the ground. These cavalrymen stared at the city guards on top of the city wall, not saying a word, just like a group of stone pillars. Wu Qi took a few steps forward and stood behind one of the battlements. He poked his head out and shouted, "Who are you?" After 10 minutes of silence, a skinny, 6 feet tall, red-armored cavalryman slowly rode forward a few hundred feet. This cavalryman rolled his eyes and stared at Wu Qi fiercely. He shouted, "Luo Kadi, the commander of Lord Puyang's personal guards, here to escort Marquis back." It was Lord Puyang's men, they were here to retrieve Lu Suifeng's body. Wu Qi suddenly regretted that he didn't send Lu Suifeng's body back to Lord Puyang's mansion earlier. This way, Lord Puyang wouldn't have to find an excuse to send so many men to Little Meng City. Over 6,000 red-armored cavalrymen, all of them were elites. Lord Puyang obviously didn't have good intentions. But what was he going to do? Was he going to kill Wu Qi and Lu Qingfeng to avenge his son? Wu Qi thought for a while, then he shook his head and said, "The city is too small, General Luo, please set up camp outside of the city." An elegant man, wearing a red leather armor and holding a feather fan, rode forward. He stared at Wu Qi and shouted, "We're here to escort Marquis back. Once we've sent Marquis's body, we'll return immediately and won't disturb you again." Wu Qi stared at the scholar and shouted, "Who are you?" The scholar answered with a loud voice, "I'm Lord Puyang's follower, Ma Yang." Lu Qingfeng came next to Wu Qi. He stared at the 2 men below the city wall, laughed and said, "I've heard that Lord Puyang has General Luo Kadi, who is able to take the head of a general in an army of 10,000, and Mr. Ma Yang, who is able to kill without leaving a trace. I've heard about you for a long time." Ma Yang smiled, casually cupped his fist toward the city wall and didn't say anything. Luo Kadi shouted with a stern voice, "Stop talking nonsense. Hand over Marquis's body and we'll return immediately." Over 6,000 red-armored cavalrymen responded together, then Chi-Chi raised his head and shouted, "Marquis! Marquis! Marquis!" Each of these red-armored cavalrymen had a strong cultivation level. Over 6,000 of them shouted at the same time, shaking the city wall of Little Meng City. "This doesn't look good." Lu Qingfeng frowned. "Why do I have a feeling that once we open the city gate and hand over Lu Suifeng's body, they will immediately attack Little Meng City and slaughter everyone in the city?" Wu Qi looked at Luo Kedi and Ma Yang with a smile on his face, and said with a low voice, "Could it be that we've done too many bad things?" Lu Qingfeng gazed at him unhappily and said, "Lu Suifeng was poisoned to death by a poisonous bug, it has nothing to do with us." Wu Qi remained silent for a while, then he moved closer to Lu Qingfeng and whispered into his ear, "But, it was me who shot those poisonous bugs into his ear." Wu Qi was laughing secretly, while Lu Qingfeng's eyes turned white, and he couldn't say anything for a long time. Suddenly, he had a feeling that over 6,000 red-armored cavalrymen were preparing to attack the city for revenge. Both of them looked at each other, and after a while, Lu Qingfeng shouted, "General Meng, please bring 100 men with you and Mr. Ma Liang into the city to welcome Marquis back." Luo Kedi raised his head up and stared at Wu Qi and Lu Qingfeng for a while, then he waved his hand. From the army behind, 100 cavalrymen sprinted out. Chapter 52. Muffled clops could be heard as Luo Kedi and Ma Liang led 100 blood-armored cavalrymen into Little Meng City. Lu Qingfeng's face darkened when he saw the mounts of Luo Kedi and his men. These mounts looked like a combination of a big dog and a horse. Their pectoral muscles and hind legs were well developed, and their forelimbs were long and powerful. It was obvious that they had a terrifying explosive force. These mounts had horns on their heads, scales on their skin, sharp claws on their toes, and sharp fangs that looked like daggers in their mouths. Crocatas. These are the unique mounts of the 1st Heavenly Battalion of the Lu Kingdom's Yulin Army. The combat strength of each crocatas is comparable to a warrior with an inner force of 30 years. Lu Qingfeng lowered his voice and said, "Lord Puyang is just a relative of the Lu Kingdom, how can he mobilize the Yulin army?" Relative, where does this relative come from? When Wu Qi heard the words Yulin army, he knew he was in deep trouble. Lord Puyang's wife is Princess Yingchuan of the Lu Kingdom, the youngest daughter of the current king. Lu Qingfeng quickly reacted and said, "Lord Puyang's youngest sister is married to Lord Baishua, Lu Buhuan. Lord Baishua is the younger brother of the current king, and he is in charge of the Lu Kingdom's personal guards." Lu Qingfeng slapped on his thigh and said with his teeth clenched, "Lord Baishua, Lu Buhuan, he mobilized the Yulin army without permission, how dare he?" Wu Qi wasn't interested in the matter of Lord Baishua mobilizing the Yulin army, but he was curious about the complicated relationship of Lord Puyang's family. Lord Puyang married the youngest daughter of the king of the Lu Kingdom, and his sister was married to his wife's uncle. So, if his son was called Lord Baishua, what should Lu Buhuan call him? Complicated, it was indeed complicated. The marriage between the rich and powerful families was really messy. Bringing with them a strong pressure, Luo Kedi and his group of 102 cavalrymen entered Little Meng City. The city gate was quickly shut. In the small tower of the city gate, under the guidance of Wu Qi, a few ballistae, which were privately crafted by the craftsmen of Little Meng City over the past few months, were being loaded. Pure steel bolts, the size of a spear, were locked onto Luo Kedi and his men. Wu Qi and Lu Qingfeng quickly came down from the wall. Lu Qingfeng bowed at Luo Kedi and said, "Wu Qi, General Meng." Sitting on the back of crocatas, Luo Kedi looked down at Lu Qingfeng with a condescending look. With an expressionless face, he shook his head and said, "I am a second-grade captain general, so the city governor should address himself as a lowly official." Meng City's Luo Kedi said, sitting on top of crocatas. King, cool up his expression. His, Wu, and his said, saying, "I, Wu, King Qingfeng, you." Chen, Qingfeng, Chen, King, General, Chen, General Acting, Chen, Deputy General, Mayor, Acting, Luo. Lu Qingfeng's face turned cold, and he bowed at Lu Qingfeng again, saying, "You flatter me." Luo Kedi picked up the horsewhip and gave Lu Qingfeng's shoulder a hard poke, sneered and said, "Well said, well said." Luo Kedi picked up his horsewhip and poked it on Lu Qingfeng's shoulder. "Where is our marquis? Bring me to see him. Also, where are those bastards Lu Zhong and the rest of them?" The pure steel whip poked Lu Qingfeng's shoulder. He took a step back and said with a deep voice, "Please follow me. I have been keeping the Marquis's body." As for Lu Zhong and his personal guards, they were all killed when the barbarians invaded the city. Mao Yang suddenly asked, "All the personal guards of our Marquis were killed?" Wu Qi took a step forward and answered in a serious tone, "Yes." When the barbarians invaded the city, Lu Zhong and his personal guards said they wanted to avenge the Marquis. They risked their lives and charged into the barbarian army. In the end, they were all killed by the barbarians. Mao Yang snapped, "Not a single one of them is alive." Wu Qi breathed out a long sigh and said, "All the subordinates of the Marquis are loyal men. When they saw the Marquis was killed, they were all prepared to die. None of them are alive." Mao Yang suddenly laughed and said, "I see. They did die a worthy death. It was just that he didn't expect that old dog Lu Zhong to be so hot-blooded. I thought that old dog Lu Zhong would only care about his own life, and wouldn't have the courage to sacrifice himself for his master." Wu Qi laughed as well. He looked at Mao Yang and said, "That's why I said, you can't judge a book by its cover, and you can't judge a man by his usual impression. Old Mr. Lu Zhong sacrificed his life for justice, and that's what we should learn from him. Lord Puyang is indeed a wise man. All his subordinates are loyal and brave. That's what they call a family of heroes." Luo Kadi's mouth twitched, and he almost whipped Wu Qi to death. Mao Yang's grip tightened as well. He wished he could break Wu Qi's skull with his whip. Lu Qingfeng reached his right hand to his back and pinched his own waist. Only then did he stop himself from laughing crazily in his mind. A family of heroes? That was a nice word to use. Speechless, the group of men arrived at the mayor's mansion in silence. Along the way, Luo Kadi's eagle-like eyes were quickly glancing over the streets and alleys of Little Meng City. He glanced over those new tall arrow towers that were built in between the streets, and those permanent barricades that were erected in between the streets. Since the incident of barbarians breaching the city 2 months ago, Wu Qi had led the soldiers of city guards to build these fortifications in Little Meng City. Basically, they had reached the standard of 200 feet tall arrow towers, 1,000 feet tall barricades, and every house had a bridge, and every house had a secret passage. Luo Kadi's face darkened. He did a quick calculation in his mind. With all these arrow towers and barricades in front of him, if they used cavalry to attack the city, even if they managed to break into the city, they would still suffer a great loss. Mao Yang's eyes flickered. He looked at those arrow towers and barricades from top to bottom, his brows knitted tightly. When they arrived at the entrance of the mayor's mansion, Mao Yang suddenly asked, "I heard those barbarians had robbed and killed all the wealthy merchants in the city. Now, all the specialty businesses in Little Meng City are taken over by the locals?" Wu Qi didn't say anything, he just nodded his head at Mao Yang and said, "Mister, you are indeed well informed." Mao Yang's brows knitted even tighter. What he said just now was like a heavy punch, but Wu Qi's answer was as light as a feather, as if it was just a piece of cotton. It gave him a feeling that he had missed his target, and it made him feel very uncomfortable and strenuous. The main entrance of the mayor's mansion opened up, and the group entered the mansion. Lu Suifeng's coffin was resting in the ruins of Yi Yan's former mayor's mansion. Because of the big fire that day, the entire mayor's mansion was burned to the ground. Therefore, Wu Qi simply asked someone to build a huge mourning shed on top of it, and placed countless green pines and cypresses on top of it. A large amount of fresh flowers, incense, and candles were placed around Lu Suifeng's coffin, surrounded by the fresh flowers and green branches. Then, a group of men and women were hired to act as the filial sons and grandsons, crying in front of the coffin. The atmosphere was very sad and solemn. Looking at the huge mourning shed in front of them, and the huge coffin that was made from a whole piece of golden leaf sandalwood, Luo Kadi and Mao Yang were speechless. From the location of the mourning shed, they could tell that this was the best spot in the mayor's mansion, and it should be the residence of the mayor. But now, it had become the resting place for Lu Suifeng. Judging from the etiquette, Luo Kadi and Mal Yang couldn't find any fault with it. Green pines and cypresses, fresh flowers, incense, and candles, as well as over 100 filial sons and grandsons who were crying bitterly. All the etiquette had been fulfilled, and it was even better than what they had imagined. What else could they say? With drooping eyelids, Luo Kadi and Mal Yang lit an incense stick for Lu Suifeng. Then, Mal Yang gritted his teeth and shouted, "Come, examine the corpse." Wu Qi sucked in a cold breath immediately. An autopsy? Are they serious? Is it Lord Puyang's idea, or is it Lord Baishua's idea? What a cruel move. 5 short and shriveled old men walked out from among the 100 knights. Their bodies were emitting a gloomy aura, and they carried a faint smell of corpses. They walked unsteadily, and didn't have any internal energy. However, their eyes were bright, and when they looked at people, it was as if they were looking at corpses. They walked to the coffin, pushed open the heavy lid, and carried Lu Suifeng's body out of the coffin. Lu Suifeng's body was wrapped in a thick layer of silk, and it was covered with antiseptic powder and medicine. These 5 old men quickly tore apart all the silk with a small knife, revealing Lu Suifeng's blackened body. He died of a deadly poison. The wound is on his ear. There are no internal injuries, and his internal organs are intact. External injuries, and his lower body is injured. Apart from that, there are no other injuries. The 5 old men dismembered Lu Suifeng's body with 5 small knives, and dug out his internal organs, including his brain, one by one. Then, they used all kinds of strange tools to examine them. They even cut off a small piece of tissue from Lu Suifeng's internal organs, and soaked it in a strange potion. Through the changes in the color of the potion, they tested what kind of poison Lu Suifeng was poisoned with, and how many kinds of poisons he was poisoned with. When Lu Qingfeng saw the scene of Lu Suifeng being dismembered, he immediately turned around. Wu Qi curiously stood beside the 5 old men, admiring their swift movements, and from time to time, he would ask them about the tools and potions they used. It was nothing more than a forensic doctor performing an autopsy. What was there to be surprised about? After tossing and turning Lu Suifeng's body for almost an hour, the 5 old men wiped the sweat off their foreheads and stood up. General Luo, Mr. Ma, the Marquis was indeed poisoned to death by a poisonous bug that crawled into his ear. But the wound on his lower body is a little strange. The 5 old men stood in a straight line in front of Luo Kadi, and bowed deeply to him. Luo Kadi walked to Lu Suifeng's side. He stared at Lu Suifeng's broken body for a long time, then he clenched his teeth and said, "The Marquis said that we must thoroughly investigate the death of the Marquis. Whoever dares to go against us, the Duke of Puyang Mansion, should be prepared to die." Turning around, Luo Kadi shouted, "Where is Lu Ziyuan? Didn't he go into the forest with you? Where is Lu Ziyuan?" Stamping his feet, Luo Kadi roared angrily, "The Marquis was protected by 2 embryonic breath stage Xiantian cultivators. How could he die? And how did you come out alive? Get Lu Ziyuan out here, I want to confront him." Lu Qingfeng let out a light cough, and Zhang, who had already brought Lu Ziyuan, whose face had turned pale. Just as they arrived in front of the shed, Lu Ziyuan knelt down in front of Lu Suifeng's body and started howling. "Marquis Lu, you died a horrible death. After you died, your body was dismembered by 5 horses, and you died without a whole body." Chapter 53. Die without an intact corpse. Every single word was a heart-wrenching one. Not to mention the 5 old men who were doing the autopsy, even Luo Kadi and Mal Yang's faces turned pale. Luo Kadi let out a cold humph. He took a step forward and placed his palm on the hilt of his sword. Mal Yang let out a light humph. He reached out his hand and stopped Luo Kadi. With both hands behind his back, he walked to Lu Ziyuan, who was crying his heart out. "Sixth young Master Lu, please give me a detailed account of your journey into the mountains." Lu Ziyuan sobbed a few times. He raised his tear-stained face and stuttered, "Sir Yen Bugue of Scouting Officer has given the order. Anyone who dares to reveal anything about this trip will be killed. His family will be stripped of all titles and official positions, and his whole family will be exiled." Mao Yang opened his mouth, but he was also frightened by Lu Ziyuan's words. Wu Qi nodded his head silently. He was indeed a young master from an aristocratic family. Wu Qi had never taught Lu Ziyuan these words, but he was able to use Yen Bugue's name to scare Mao Yang. He was indeed the sixth young master of the Lu family. Luo Kedi, who was standing at the side, stomped his feet and shouted, "Then, tell us how our marquis died." When Lu Ziyuan heard Luo Kedi's words, he started crying and banging his head a few times on the ground. Then, he grabbed Luo Kedi's leg with his only arm and wiped his tears and snot onto Luo Kedi's battle robe. While stuttering and coughing, he told Mao Yang everything that he and Wu Qi had discussed before, including how Lu Suifeng died in the forest. Basically, everything he said was the truth. From the beginning to the end, there was nothing suspicious about Lu Suifeng's death. Old Devil and Lord Flame were both killed by barbarian beast warriors. Lu Ziyuan could swear to the heavens and the earth. Lu Suifeng was also killed by a poisonous bug. Lu Ziyuan dared to swear on the souls of all his ancestors that he was indeed killed by a poisonous bug. After talking for a long time, Mao Yang kept asking Lu Ziyuan all kinds of questions. However, Wu Qi's words had gone through a lot of training, so how could he possibly make a mistake? Although Mao Yang was Lord Puyang's #1 strategist, he was still far behind Lu Xiaobai's monstrous intelligence. Lu Ziyuan's answer was flawless, and there was nothing to nitpick. Wu Qi had even purposely added a few incoherent details into Lu Ziyuan's answer, making it even more obvious that Lu Ziyuan's answer was correct. Mao Yang's heart sank. He really believed what Lu Ziyuan said was true, and Lu Suifeng was indeed killed by the barbarians. Quickly exchanging a glance with Luo Kedi, Mao Yang gritted his teeth and shouted, "How did Lu Zhong die?" "Sixth young master Lu, tell me everything in detail." How did Lu Zhong die? Of course, Lu Ziyuan's answer was impeccable, and it matched perfectly with Wu Qi's answer just now. Mao Yang blinked his eyes and angrily lowered his head, falling into deep thought. Luo Kedi let out a light cough. He freed himself from Lu Ziyuan's arm and said with a cold voice, "So, Mayor Lu, I'm going to say the same thing. Our marquis was protected by 2 embryonic breathing realm Xiantian cultivators. Why did he die in the forest, but you guys are still alive?" When Lu Qingfeng was about to say something, Wu Qi laughed out loud and said, "General Luo, what a funny question. Are you telling me that we were supposed to die in there?" Luo Kedi stared at Wu Qi and said in a cruel tone, "Our marquis is dead, and so are our 2 masters. Why are you still alive?" Luo Kedi moved his skinny body, and a scorching hot aura burst out from his body. Faint light red natural energies were rushing into his body. He was actually a Xiantian warrior, and judging from the aura he was emitting, he had obviously reached the physique-strengthening realm. When the fire elemental energy rushed into his body, his skin and flesh began to emit a light red glow, and the battle robe he was wearing suddenly started to burn. The flame wrapped around Luo Kedi, and soon, his battle robe was burnt to a crisp, leaving only the blood-red battle armor. Wu Qi quietly took a few steps back. He waved his hand, and hundreds of city guards raised their 9-bolt crossbows and aimed at Luo Kedi. "Don't be rash, don't be rash." Wu Qi sneered and said, "Even if General Luo is a Xiantian warrior, with so many 9-bolt crossbows shooting at you at such a close distance, you will be turned into a sieve. You don't want to taste it, do you?" Mao Yang let out a light cough. Luo Kedi's body trembled, and the light red flame quickly retracted back into his body. "I'm sorry." Mao Yang cupped his fist at Wu Qi and said, "Old Luo has a bad temper, but he didn't mean any harm. It's just that he couldn't accept the tragic death of the Marquis. Mayor Lu, please allow us to transport the Marquis's coffin out of the city. We will return to the capital city now." Lu Qingfeng nodded and said, "You don't want to rest for the night?" Mao Yang sighed and said, "Since things have come to this, why should we rest? We should hurry up and send the Marquis back." Wu Qi continued to ask, "Marquis is like this, is it your own idea, or is it Lord Puyang's idea?" Wu Qi pointed at Marquis Lu, whose internal organs were all removed. He was a marquis, but he was cut into pieces like this after his death. This was so strange. Mao Yang let out a long sigh and said, "How can we be so bold? It's Marquis who wants to know the exact cause of the Marquis's death." Wu Qi asked again, "Then, are you two going to leave with the Marquis just like this? Do you want Wu Qi to find some skilled craftsman to stitch up the Marquis's body?" Just when Mao Yang was about to say something, Luo Kadi shouted, "Why are you talking so much nonsense? Someone, put the Marquis into the coffin, we'll leave now." Luo Kadi threw a glance at the 9-bolt crossbows in the hands of the city guards, sneered, and said, "I didn't expect Little Meng City to have such good armaments. How could they have so many 9-bolt crossbows?" Wu Qi said with an indifferent tone, "Oh, these 9-bolt crossbows were left behind by the Marquis's personal guards after they were killed. Of course, we can't let them go to waste. Of course, these 9-bolt crossbows belong to the Marquis, but our young master is willing to buy them at a high price." Luo Kadi's expression changed and was about to explode, but Mao Yang laughed and said, "They are just worldly possessions, so what? Forget it, since the Marquis is no longer here, let's just leave these 9-bolt crossbows in Little Meng City." Sighing, Mao Yang lowered his head and asked Lu Ziyuan, who was kneeling on the ground and crying, "Sixth young master Lu, we're going back to the capital city now. Do you want to follow us back to Liang?" Lu Ziyuan was startled, then he shook his head and said, "Forget it, I've already sent a message to my family, and they have sent someone to pick me up. I haven't finished my duty as the deputy supervisory officer of the 3 armies, I really don't dare to leave my post." Mao Yang breathed out a long sigh, then he nodded his head and said, "Fine, fine." 5 old men who were in charge of the autopsy quickly threw Lu Suifeng's body into the coffin and quickly closed the lid. Dozens of blood-armored cavalrymen walked over and carried the coffin, which weighed over 2,000 kilograms, and followed Luo Kadi and Mao Yang back to the city gate. Of course, Wu Qi and Lu Qingfeng saw them off. Lu Ziyuan was also crying and shouting Lu Suifeng's name, following behind them. Just when they were walking out of the mayor's mansion, Wu Qi suddenly asked, "But, it's really strange, Marquis Lu should have had an assassin, who grew up with him, protecting him. Why didn't he do anything this time?" Luo Kadi and Mao Yang's facial muscles twitched, while Lu Ziyuan explained while sobbing, "When we were on our way to Little Meng City, we had a bet with a few young masters from the Yen family in T City. His personal assassin was killed in the battle, and the other 2 assassins were severely injured. They were sent back to the capital city to rest." Mao Yang shook his head and sighed, "The 2 assassins beside Marquis Lu, if they attacked with all their might, they would have the cultivation level of respiration stage. If they were still here, Marquis Lu wouldn't have died in the woods. This is fate. If not for the confidence that the 2 masters could protect Marquis Lu, how could they let Marquis Lu take up the position without any personal guards?" "Really?" Wu Qi turned his head and gave the surroundings a glance. After that, he unleashed his spiritual sense, covering an area of over 100 feet in circumference. He felt something was not right, but he couldn't find out what exactly was wrong. Luo Kadi kept a straight face and didn't say a word, while Mao Yang was walking slowly with a sad expression on his face, chatting with Wu Qi from time to time. Gradually, Wu Qi found out that Prince Puyang and Princess Yingchuan loved Lu Suifeng the most. Although Prince Puyang had a few children, Lu Suifeng was the biological son of Princess Yingchuan, the grandson of the current monarch of the Lu Kingdom. Therefore, his status was different from the other children. At such a young age, Lu Suifeng was conferred the title of Marquis. It showed how much the monarch of the Lu Kingdom loved Lu Suifeng, and how much Princess Yingchuan loved Lu Suifeng. If not because of Princess Yingchuan's love for Lu Suifeng, who insisted on begging her father, how could a young man like him be conferred the title of Marquis? While chatting, Wu Qi and Lu Qingfeng sent Luo Kadi, Ma Liang, and the rest of the men out of Little Meng City. With an expressionless face, Luo Kadi brought his warriors and walked back to the main group, ignoring Wu Qi and Lu Qingfeng. On the other side, Ma Liang politely and humbly bid farewell to Wu Qi and Lu Qingfeng, then with a bitter smile, he said, "Princess Yingchuan really loves the Marquis too much." Letting out a long sigh, Ma Liang turned his mount and left after leaving behind this baffling sentence. Wu Qi's expression changed instantly, and his heart suddenly started pounding violently. With a stern voice, he shouted, "Somebody, shoot them to death." Grabbing the 9-bolt crossbow from a soldier standing next to him, Wu Qi aimed it at Ma Liang's back and pulled the trigger. Crack! 9 pure steel bolts were shot out from the ground. Suddenly, an ear-piercing whistling sound was heard coming from underneath the ground. 10 shiny long blades burst out from the ground and thrust out with 3 feet long blades, aiming at the vital parts of Wu Qi and Lu Qingfeng's lower body. The blades were bone-piercing cold, and in a blink of an eye, they had sealed off all possible escape routes for Wu Qi and Lu Qingfeng. Wu Qi grabbed Lu Qingfeng and leaped up into the sky. Suddenly, the air beside him twisted, and 2 vague dark shadows appeared out of nowhere. They spread their arms and leaped towards Wu Qi. When they were still a few feet away from Wu Qi, their bodies had expanded like balloons and exploded. "Follow the Marquis, and die together." These were the last words left behind by the 2 dark shadows. Poisonous gas, poisonous blood, poisonous meat and bones were flying all over the sky, all of them shooting towards Wu Qi and Lu Qingfeng in a messy manner. Ma Liang, who had just walked a few hundred feet away, swept away the 9 heavy crossbows with a backhand. Staring at Little Meng City, he shouted out with a stern voice. "Princess Yingchuan has given the order, break into Little Meng City, and leave no one alive. Die together with the Marquis." Chapter 54. In the Liangqiu prefecture of the Lu Kingdom, Liang City. In the northern part of the city, where the Li River and the Liangqiu Mountain converged, the 5 miles wide Li River had changed from its previous 3,000 miles of turbulent flow to a gentle and elegant state, even carrying a hint of shyness and tenderness of a young girl. The Li River, which had slowed down, had formed a lake with a circumference of 30 miles. Between the mountains and the mountains was an exceptionally fertile land. A castle that was 3 times larger than the city of Liang stood on this piece of land. The city wall of Liang City was 50 feet tall and 35 feet wide, and was entirely built with bluestone strips. The city wall of the castle was 70 feet tall and 45 feet wide, and was built with granite that measured about 10 feet in both width and length. The city wall of the castle was 4 miles in both width and length. Within the castle, there were layers upon layers of mountains, rivers and gardens, and countless pavilions were hidden in the mist. At the 4 corners of the castle, there were 4 fortresses that measured 1 mile in both width and length, each with 1,200 elite soldiers stationed in each of them. A total of 4,800 elite warriors of the clan were guarding the outer defensive line of the castle, while the city guards of Liang City only numbered 3,000. On top of the 4 city gates of the castle, there was only a square black stone slab that measured 3 feet in both width and length. On top of it, a square character of Lu was written in large seal characters. Apart from that, there were no other signs. This castle was where the main branch of the Lu family of Liang City was located, the core of the Lu family. It was the place where the Lu family of Liang City, the number 1 family in the Lu Kingdom, controlled the entire power of the clan. At noon, under a dense cluster of grape trellises in the northeast corner of the city, 24 serving ladies were standing in a straight line against a parapet wall. They were holding their breaths and staring at the ground 3 inches in front of their feet, not daring to make even the slightest sound. Under the grape trellis, on a warm and sparkling white jade bed, a noblewoman whose complexion was similar to that of a 16-year-old girl, but the corners of her eyes and the tips of her brows were a bit more mature, giving off an extremely dignified and murderous aura. She was currently lazily leaning against a bundle of embroidery, lightly stroking a poisonous snake coiled in front of her. The poisonous snake was 12 feet long and as thick as an adult's arm. Its entire body was covered in blue scales, and there was an extremely thin red line from its lower jaw to its tail. The poisonous snake coiled in front of the lady, flicking its foot-long tongue in and out from time to time, letting out a hissing sound that could make anyone shudder. Those who were familiar with all poisons in the world would recognize that this poisonous snake was a rare mid-tier demonic beast, the blood rainbow blue cloud seed. This kind of snake was born 1 foot long, and it would grow 1 foot every 100 years. Looking at this blue cloud snake's body length, it should have lived for 1100 years. Lan Xiaozi ran like the wind. The blue scales on its body were extremely tough, impervious to all weapons. Its poisonous fangs were sharp enough to pierce through heavy armor, and it could easily kill any martial artist below the breath condensation tier. Under the gentle stroke of the noblewoman, this poisonous and ferocious Lan Xiaozi became as docile as a kitten. It kept flicking its tongue out lazily, and from time to time, it would wiggle its body that was glowing with a bright blue light, gently rubbing against the noblewoman's palm. Four beautiful maids with stunning figures and temperament stood by the jade bed, silently serving tea and water to the lady, peeling the skins and seeds of the grapes, and feeding the sweet grape pulp into the lady's mouth. All of a sudden, a series of rapid footsteps was heard. A middle-aged scholar, clad in undergarments and a cloak, came out from behind a cluster of blooming Chinese roses. He strode quickly to the jade bed, grabbed the Lan Xiaozi, and threw it over 70 to 80 feet away, then lay down right next to the noblewoman. His right arm wrapped around the noblewoman's waist, and he massaged her waist and buttocks a few times. The 4 serving ladies bowed deeply and respectfully, then called out softly, "Clan leader." Lu Wenrua, the current clan leader of Lu clan, the husband of Lady Ranyang, and the nominal father of Lu Qingfeng, reached out his hand and patted the chest of one of the serving ladies, then said coolly, "All right, don't be so courteous. Since when have you few little demons ever treated me as the clan leader?" The 4 serving ladies giggled, their cheeks blushing red as they stared at Lu Wenrua with tender eyes. The noblewoman lying on the jade bed, who was also Lu Qingfeng's mother, Lady Ranyang, frowned and scolded impatiently, "A bunch of foxes. Get the hell away from me. Lan air, Lan air." Following Lady Ronyang's shout, the poisonous Lan Xiaozi, which was thrown far away, sprung back with its mouth wide open, ready to pounce on the 4 serving ladies. The faces of the serving ladies instantly turned pale, and they quickly backed off. The Lan Xiaozi proudly straightened half of its body, then began to walk around the jade bed. Lu Wenrua chuckled, then reached out his hand to untie Lady Ronyang's belt. At the same time, he threw his cloak on the ground. Impatiently, he leaped onto Lady Ronyang's body, hugged her, and kissed her fiercely. "My dear wife, why are you still so jealous? Didn't you agree to let me take these girls into my room?" Hee hee. Grabbing Lu Wenrua's ear, Lady Ranyang narrowed her eyes and sneered, "Why are you in such a hurry? Did something good happen to you?" While undressing Lady Ranyang, Lu Wenrua said proudly, "The positions of Liang County, Wenshan County, and Liao County have been taken by a few of my brothers. There are 47 counties in the Lu Kingdom, and currently, there are 12 county governors in the Lu clan. Isn't this enough for you to reward your husband?" Lady Ranyang grabbed Lu Wenrua's ear and twisted it, then sneered and said, "If you want to touch me, you have to make it clear first. Why did the positions of the county governors fall into the hands of your Lu clan so quickly? What did you use to exchange for it?" Impatiently kissing Lady Ronyang's pretty face, Lu Wenrua laughed and said, "What do you mean by Lu clan?" "Madam, it is Lu clan. Now that you are the wife of the Lu clan, aren't you in charge of all the affairs in the clan?" "Hee hee, do you really need to know what I used to exchange for it?" Blinking his eyes quickly, Lu Wenrua didn't say anything for a long time. Lady Ranyang let go of Lu Wenrua's ear, then gently patted his cheek. Qingfen, no matter what, is a piece of flesh that fell from my body. All these years, you know how Chu Hai and the others have treated Qingfen. Qingfen was almost killed a few times, and I don't think I need to tell you who the mastermind was. Letting out a soft sigh, Lady Ranyang straightened her upper body and pushed Lu Wenrua aside. Since you used Qingfen's life to exchange for the positions of the county governors of 3 counties, then. After a moment of silence, Lady Ranyang breathed out a long sigh and said, after all, he is my son, the position of the county governor of 3 counties. Using my son's life in exchange for such a great benefit for the Lu clan, how should I, as his mother, feel? Raising her brows, Lady Ranyang said with an indifferent tone, without my permission, no one can touch even a single hair of Qingfen's. Not even Princess Yingchuan, that slut who can sleep with any man, can do it. She promised you the land of 3 counties, but I didn't agree to give her my son's life. Lu Wenrua narrowed his eyes and stared at Lady Ranyang, then said with an indifferent tone, Yingchuan has mobilized the 1st Heaven Troop of the Yulin army. Lady Ranyang twitched her lips disdainfully and said, it's just 6,000 krokatas. If I want to, I can destroy them with a flick of my finger. Lu Wenrua knitted his brows, snorted coldly and said, all the fishing, salt, and iron in 3 counties will belong to Marquis Yuanyang's mansion. Marquis Yuanyang's mansion will own 50% of the gold and iron mines in 3 counties. Marquis Yuanyang's mansion will own 10% of the energy stone mines in 3 counties. Are you satisfied with this, my lady? Lady Ranyang raised one finger, smiled mischievously like a teenage girl and said, the general of the 3 counties must be someone who has worked in Marquis Yuanyang's mansion for a long time. All the military funds and assets will be given to the general. Lu Wenrua nodded his head helplessly and said, as you wish, as you wish. You and I are husband and wife, why are you being so calculative? Lady Ranyang smiled charmingly, reached out her hand and hooked Lu Wenrua's chin, then slid her palm into his clothes. This is what a good husband should be like. Husband and wife should be husband and wife, but the matters between 2 families should be kept between 2 families. We can't mix them together. Suddenly, 2 drops of tears rolled down from Lady Ronyang's eyes. She said with a low voice, poor Qingfen, it has been hard for him all these years. Lu Wenrua's emotions were stirred. He pushed Lady Ranyang down onto the jade bed and was about to thrust his spear into her body. At that moment, when both of them were about to enter the harbor, a young girl dressed in black quickly walked out from behind a vine. Holding a small note in her hand, she quickly came before the jade bed and said with a low voice, I've just received a letter from the Black Swallow. Yan Buji from Zhuoguizheng of Great Yan Dynasty fell into the river and drowned. Yan Buji doesn't have any children, but he has 19 illegitimate children. The imperial court of Great Yan Dynasty has ruled that among these 19 illegitimate children, the one who arrives at Ji City first will inherit all the titles, official positions, and fiefs of Zhuoguizheng. Lu Wenrua laughed and said, the most absurd and unruly member of the imperial clan of Great Yan Dynasty is finally dead? I wonder which illegitimate child has the fortune. On the other side, Lady Ranyang screamed and kicked Lu Wenrua off the jade bed. She roared with a hoarse voice, Yan Buji is dead. The one who arrives at Ji City first will inherit all his possessions. Damn it! Damn it! Dispatch all the mountain-crushing cavalry of Lu clan. Spare no cost, save my dear son and return to Ji City at the fastest speed possible. Lu Wenrua leaped up in anger, pointed his finger at Lady Ranyang and roared, Tai Yuewu, are you crazy? Lady Ranyang leaped 8 feet high and screamed, Yingchuan, that bitch. How dare she hurt my dear son, Qingfeng? I'll fight her to the death. Why aren't you mobilizing the mountain-crushing cavalry to save Qingfeng? His father, his biological father is Yan Buji. Lu Wenrua felt as if he was struck by a thunderbolt, and his body turned stiff. Yen Buji was the direct descendant of Yen Dan, the founding emperor of Great Yen Dynasty. He was conferred the title of duke, and held the position of Zhuoguozheng. He was responsible for supervising the affairs of 37 vassal kingdoms west of Great Yen Dynasty, and could adjudicate all the disputes between all 37 vassal kingdoms west of Great Yen Dynasty. He was also in charge of 2 counties of Great Yen Dynasty, and ruled over 10 million people. Lu Qingfeng was the son of Lady Ranyang who had an affair with Yen Buji. Didn't that mean he had the right to fight for the rich inheritance left behind by Yen Buji? Lu Wenrua suddenly leaped up 80 feet high and roared furiously, "Dispatch all the mountain-crushing cavalry and head to Little Meng City at the fastest speed possible. Whoever dares to hurt a single hair of my son, I'll wipe out his entire family. Even if it's that bitch Yingchuan, Lu Wenrua, will rebel." 8,000 mountain-crushing cavalry, the private army of Lu clan of Liang, were dispatched. Under the command of Marquis Yuanyang, the blood-draining army, which consisted of 3 armies of heaven, earth, and human, consisting of 18,000 soldiers, followed closely behind the mountain-crushing cavalry and headed to Little Meng City. You're tuning in to the Blissful Bookshelf YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.